One big team. One big team. One big team.
Hello and welcome to Riot Act episode 77. Slut drops and beatdowns ... At last is the name of this week's show. We already know that because that's what we should have called last week's show. Apologies for everyone who tweeting us going, can't believe it, you idiots. We fucked up. What can we say?
We dropped the ball.
We dropped the ball massively.
Yeah.
My name's Stephen Hill. That's the voice of Renfrey Deadman. You can hear croaking away.
Yeah.
Someone's been to see Slipknot last night.
Yeah, someone has, and someone has to apologise profusely, bearing in mind that we're primarily in the auditory realm. I'm going to sound like a husky motherfucker this week, and all I can do is apologise.
It suits you, mate. I'm not going to lie.
Oh, thanks, man.
It actually suits you.
It's because I was screaming.
Duality.
I actually went for a piss during Duality. I've seen it a million times. Yeah, it's because I was screaming, you can't see California without Marlon Brando's eyes over and over again. Yes, please.
Did you do the mother fucker?
Of course I did. That's why I sound like I do.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to be buying a ticket to Slipknot at the O2. Like I couldn't get. I just probably shouldn't say this really, but it's fine. I don't expect to get on the guest list for anything, but the guest list is tight at Slipknot at the O2. I'll tell you that. So I'm going to buy a ticket like a normal person. I thought it was a bigger deal than I was.
Don't piss off the Slipknot PRs.
I'm not pissing them off. I said to them, I was like, dude, I'm really sorry. I've come at this too late. And they were like, yeah, you have a bit. You're not not as important.
You did ask like a few days ago.
But it's like walking distance to. I lived in Hammersmith when they did the Slipknot at the Hammersmith Apollo with Machine Gun.
That was fantastic. Yeah.
And I literally went and stood outside the venue and looked through the doors because I couldn't get a ticket back before I was doing this, and I was like, oh, I'll finally be able to walk home from a Slipknot gig,
mate.
And I still can't, but it's fine. I'll find a ticket. You tweet me if you want to sell a standing Slipknot ticket. On the show this week, we're going to be reviewing new releases, new albums from Caspian, Higher Power, Pine Grove, and the new EP from Holy Fawn, plus a very, very, very interesting trade-off coming your way, pitting the beige against the ridiculous as two of the music critics' kryptonite go head-to-head as we discuss the relative quote-unquote merits of the Enemy's 2012 musical whipping boy, Streets in the Sky, and Meatloaf's 1993 blow-a-thon, Bat Out of Hell 2.
I cannot wait for this. So I tweeted just before I got here that my music highlight of the week has been revisiting Meatloaf's Bat Out of Hell 2. And on a week where Caspian have released a new album, a band who I adore, Holy Fawn have surprise released an EP, and I went to see Slipknot and Behemoth live. That's pretty incredible, that Meatloaf 2.
Spoiler alert, I'm having a miserable time in trade-off this week for both of those records. All right, we should say a big thank you as ever to our friends at Musicism. Go over to musicism.net where you can sign yourself up for some courses that will make you musically more interesting than the Enemy. And hopefully musically slightly more discerning than Meatloaf. So if you want to be a better guitarist, or if you want to be a better singer, or if you want to be a better producer, it's £9.99 a month to sign up for all of their online tutorials, and you can get 25% off if you put the code RIOT in capital letters in the checkout. We should also chat about our Patreon page. It's been a while, to be fair. As long-term listeners will know, we had a little couple of bumps in the road throughout last year, towards the end of the year particularly. We were sort of saying that we were going to get back doing Riot Ears reviews, and we sort of tentatively started doing some more Riot Ears reviews. But if you want to go over to patreon.com/Riot Act Podcast, that's where you can find us if you want to donate any money to the cause at all.
Oh, the rebellion.
The cause of the rebellion. the biggest media rebellion since...
Careful.
Who knows?
Getting flashbacks.
Yeah. But we've done, what is it now, 22 Riot Ears reviews?
I think it is 22, yeah.
So if you sign up for the Patreon page, you can suggest an album. It could be any album, literally any album that you...
Literally any album.
Whatever you want to do. So far we have
Smurfs
done...
Go Pop, if you want.
Oh, please, but don't. So far we have already...
Oh, Biffy Clyro, the Vertigo
got our
Bliss.
chops around. That was one of the newer ones.
Killing Joke.
Killing Joke. Manic Street Preachers, Gold Against the Soul.
Yep.
Bon Iver's 22 a Million.
Yep.
Stand on the Shoulder of Giants by Oasis.
Very
The Magic
interesting
Whip
one, yep.
by Blur.
Yep.
Typo Negative, Dead Again.
Yep.
The Anthropocene Extinction by
Cattle Decapitation.
Cattle Decapitation. and Devin Townsend's Ocean Machine.
We did, didn't we?
We did that. Yeah, we've done a few, but recently some of the newer ones that have come up. Obviously, we did have a bit of a break. We have done Vertigo Bliss by Biffy Clyro. We've done a short strut to the Brassy Front by Rotherham's This Girl.
Yep.
Brassy, I said this week.
Yes, you did say Brassy.
Yeah, right with that. Good.
Yeah, I was going to do the This Girl joke again, but I couldn't be asked.
Yeah.
Sign up just for the This Girl joke. I think that's worth £1 a month, frankly.
And we've just put out Neutral Milk Hotels
in the aeroplane over the sea.
I can never remember the name of that album. Obviously, that is a massive cult album. And going up very shortly, we should be doing what is maybe my favourite one so far, which was we sat down and chatted, not just about the soundtrack, but the Trent Reznor produced soundtrack to Oliver Stone's 1993, four,
I think it's 4.
film Natural Born Killers.
Really
which
interesting
was
one.
A crazy thing.
Yeah, quite a long one as well. That's like a 45-minute one. Like most of them are around half an hour, but that was quite a long one. So yeah, it was good fun.
Yeah, it's kind of practice for. Oh, you didn't want me to say anything, but we might be doing more. We're going to do more stuff with that.
We're going to be doing more stuff.
We're going to be doing more stuff on the Patreon page. So get ready for that. Get ready for that. Another week where we have to talk about really shitty news as well, Renfrey. The kind of big story that has dominated music over the last few days is Ozzy Osbourne's diagnosis of Parkinson's disease. Obviously, Ozzy's cancelled a lot of tour dates, particularly those dates with Judas Priest, which were due to take place last February, I believe. It was meant to be last February, wasn't it?
Oh, God, yeah, it was something like that. And they were rescheduled for November this year, I think.
And then they were kind of put back again.
Sorry, yeah.
So it was last November they were rescheduled for, put back again. And to be fair, I mean, I don't really know if we'll ever see Ozzy. I don't think it seems hard to think that you will ever see Ozzy Osbourne as a touring musician again.
I for the sake of his health, more than anything, I hope we don't. I think
he's 71.
I think he has earned his retirement, and I think I'm not going to get into whether he should have retired before. I mean, people will know my opinion on that, I'm sure, but I think it's probably about time. Maybe this is the thing that will, actually get him to have some rest finally. I think what I really don't want to sound too, I don't know, heartless, but I wasn't massively surprised considering how hard he's been pushed for so long.
Yeah, and what he's done, and I'm not just referring to the drugs and the alcohol, which is obviously something which will have negative effects on the human body, but also, he had a quad bike accident in, was it 2000? I think it's 2003, 2004 time. Yeah. Which nearly could have killed him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when another that Rick Mel had a similar thing.
Yep.
Rick Mel passed away at a much younger age than Ozzy as well, and that was all due to the kind of after effects of that accident. And I mean, I watched the Michael Hutchence documentary over Christmas as well.
I saw. I've still got the last half hour to watch, but yes.
Yeah, and Michael Hutchence again, had a fall, and never really truly recovered. And so it's not surprising. It's just it is sad, and the interview itself, watching kind of Ozzy and Sharon sitting there, and Ozzy's quite stoic, but
it was on Good Morning America. Is that the interview you're referring to? Yeah.
You rarely see Sharon getting particularly emotional in that way, and it was quite an unusual and quite telling thing to see. It's really sad, and it a world without the sort of any of the members of Black Sabbath is obviously going to be a really, really tragic day. But he said himself, he's not dying, but I do think the idea of ever getting to see Ozzy Osbourne up on stage again, and he's been obviously, his shows are famously hit and miss. I don't think I'm being too harsh in saying that.
I think that's polite.
Yeah.
Like, not to kick someone when they're down, but that's
you know, his shows have been hit and miss.
Yeah.
I've seen some great I saw some great Black Sabbath shows at the sort of the midpoint of the last decade. But I also saw a bit of Ozzy at Download that year, and I saw Sabbath at Download in 2000 and I want to say 16, and it was not good, man. You know, it was not good. So, you know, and he just doesn't strike me as a sort of person who should be made to, you know, like, have you ever interviewed Ozzy before?
No.
So I had about 15 minutes with him at the backstage at the Metal Hammer Awards in 2018, I want to say. Yeah, 2018. And he looked so, you know, he was a really, really nice dude.
Yeah.
Like, really, really friendly, chatty, lovely bloke.
Yeah.
But he wasn't really sort of there. Do you know what I mean? And I did think it's amazing that this guy can get up how he is now and be able to do even what he did at, you know, I'd seen him literally the night before going, "Oh, it's not great this," but on reflection, having the guy sat opposite me, I was like, well, you know, in comparison to what sat in front of me, it's amazing that he could even do what he did that night. So I would like him to retire, really.
Yeah, well, yeah, same.
You know, and I just, you know, he's always going to be fucking Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah, of course, he's always going to be a legend, and you know, I mean, it's interesting because there's this new Ozzy Osbourne album that's about to come out as well, and I'm sure that's going to be painted in a different light as a result and all that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, he's always going to be a legend of the scene. I mean, he was part of the band that invented heavy metal. Like, you can't take that away from him, you know, and he doesn't need to do, you know, show after show after show after show. I don't think he could taint his legacy, really.
No.
But he doesn't need to do show after show after show of diminishing returns anymore.
I mean, if he could taint his legacy, let's be honest, he has. If he could, he has.
Yeah.
Because some of those shows haven't been great, and people, you know, if Black Sabbath, if they turn around tomorrow and went, Black Sabbath are playing at the O2, do you want a ticket? I'd go, yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, yeah, I probably would, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, God, I'd still go.
Yeah.
Of course I would.
Yeah.
But I just wouldn't expect much from it.
Yeah.
But the fact of hearing those songs and seeing those people, that's one of the ones where I go, yeah, that won't ever get old, no matter how bad it gets. You know, you can just sort of go, you kind of grit your teeth and go, fuck it, it's Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
You know? So anyway, we wish Ozzy all the best and whatever happens. And I hope he does what's best for him and his life and his family. Let's get to it then, Renfrey. People probably want to know about the big early tour of January. So let me start. Darkest Hour at the Underworld last night. I went to see Darkest Hour at the Underworld with a fucking great support bill, actually. Une Misère, opening up, who were very, very good.
Yeah.
We reviewed their album. And
Of course, you've seen them live now. Yeah. So did that change your feelings?
Yeah, I thought they were really good.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't even change my feelings. I liked them before.
Well, no, sure. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where there are a few bits towards the end where I was like, fuck me, this band are great. There was one I can't remember what the name of the song is, but that one with the drum and bassy bit, which I sort of was like,
yeah, a bit
live,
too 90s.
It was amazing. Like, really, really just so propulsive and brilliant. They were very good. I watched a little bit of Bloodlet, I sort of heard a little bit of Bloodlet. You know, 90s hardcore is obviously my thing, but I needed to sit down. I really like Fallujah, who seemed like an odd fit on that bill, but are you much of a fan of Fallujah? It's kind of tech death. Fallujah, they've been on Nuclear Blast for a few years. They had an album out a couple of years ago, just before we started this podcast, which was fucking excellent. Like, they've been at the sort of peripheral. They've been sort of tipped by people it felt like they had a bit of hype around them about sort of 2016.
I feel like this has gone over my head.
Is it? Okay. I'm not sure if it would be really the sort of thing, because it is like very sort of tech death, and an odd fit for a bill with sort of majority it being a metalcore band, so it's a bit weird. But much better on record, I have to say, than live. But very good live, and they basically played a kind of co-headline slot.
Okay.
I wish I could remember what their last album's called. I could probably look it up. Doesn't matter. It's really, really good, and yeah, they're like phenomenal musicians. You talk about bands who have tracks and not being able to pull stuff off live.
Yep.
it's not really something that I ever think about when I'm watching those tech bands. I just sort of take a lot of it as, oh yeah, there you go. But then you see a band like Fallujah and I go, oh yeah, shit, like they're actually playing pretty much everything live. Pretty much everything, apart from a few of the those like orchestral synthy bits that are in the background. Sure. All the guitar parts were definitely getting played live, so that was good. Darkest Hour are always brilliant, celebrating 25 years of being a band. I feel like I've seen them about 5 or 6 times since that last record came out a couple of years back, which I'm more than happy to. I think I put on Instagram that I would happily go and watch them again next week if they came back to the UK, because they're just fucking brilliant. Played a set of old stuff and sort of deep cuts because it's their 25th anniversary. Yeah. So got like Epitaph from what's the album? The second album. I've forgotten what that's called off the top of my head as well.
I know the last one.
Okay, fine. And it was really good. It was really good. They sounded great. They're probably, I thought about it, I was like, as what you think of what metalcore is, like In Flames and Dark Tranquillity and sort of Swedish Melodeath and Swedish Gates thing mixed with hardcore. They're probably the first band I ever heard do that.
Right.
So I do have a bit of a soft spot for them, and I feel like everybody will be every band that does that gets judged at Darkest Hour's level. Yeah, fucking great. So yeah, love Darkest Hour.
Yeah,
I would have liked to have seen Slipknot with you, but
I kind of I like Darkest Hour more than I imagine people would think I do. And I've only really ever gone in properly on that last record, but I do actually think they do something which I'm not the biggest fan of very, very well, and I can see that. That Fallujah album was called Undying Light.
That's it.
There we go.
Yeah, that's good, that record.
Yes. So
anyway, go on, Renfrey.
I hauled my ass up to Nottingham Motorpoint Arena last night as we record this to see Behemoth and Slipknot. Now, I need to talk quite a bit about Behemoth. I mean, firstly, fair fucking play Slipknot for bringing Behemoth out on an arena tour with them around the UK and possibly Europe as well.
Yeah.
I think is it Europe as well?
And America.
Fuck me. I mean, that is fantastic. And I was watching them last night. And I will say that they had shitloads of production. They sounded great. I mean, it took a couple of songs to get it sounding good, but it clearly wasn't due to a headline act sabotaging it, because that does happen. More often than you'd think as well. So they were given all of the tools that they needed to be excellent, and they were they were fantastic. We've talked about on this show quite a lot how getting an arena support slot can sometimes be a bit of a poisoned chalice because
especially if you're an extreme metal band and it's not happened that much, but Slipknot do have a previous for that, don't they?
They do, yeah.
In Flames back on the Iowa tour,
yeah.
There's probably been others, but I can't remember.
No, like they've been amazing, and like they're clearly
Suicidal Tendencies was supporting them. Yeah, no, they're not an extreme metal band,
but they're clearly really, really good to their support acts as well, and give them everything that they need. And I think that should be championed because a lot of bands of Slipknot size don't. Basically, played a really interesting set. Behemoth, like no blow your trumpets, no dog equals God equals dog. Yeah. It was like, God, you guys like. Such a typical what I mean it was awesome, but like none of the quote unquote hits. It sounds like a weird thing to say with Polish black metal, satanic black metal, but none of the quote unquote hits or anything like that. They did like Bartzabal and stuff like that, Of Fire in the Void, Walls of Siberia, but did
they end with Chant for
Escalon? They did indeed. Yes. Fucking excellent. Yeah. And, they had fire. They had a couple of screens. They had a backdrop, which was the size of the stage. They just had everything that they needed. And the other thing that was brilliant, and so as I was saying about support acts, sometimes it's a poison chalice. I mean, it's very, very, very rare that you go and see a support act at an arena show And most of the time, the arena is, what would you say? How full is an arena for a support act generally, if you had to give it an average percent-wise?
I mean, for an opener, probably like less than half full usually.
Yeah, I was gonna say 40%. That was it. I reckon it was 90% full for Behemoth.
Really?
For pretty much their entire set. And I think that says an awful lot. They were given 45 minutes or thereabouts anyway, because it was sort of a special guest slot. And to me, that sort of said that, you know, I think sometimes people go into an arena, will listen to the band for like a minute and then go, oh, the sound's rubbish, and then fuck off and have a beer outside. But that said to me that people were coming in, checking it out and staying because they were like, what the fuck is this? This is amazing. And the fact that they're, you know, I mean, they're probably playing to as many people in one night as they tend to play for an entire UK tour or European tour. I mean, the mass of that is not exact, but you know. And it's fucking awesome. Like, and they were excellent. They were really, really, really good. And even when, you know, they have the cojones not to break out their biggest tunes, you know, they only played one song from The Satanist.
I know. They did a bit of that when they headlined the Forum, didn't they?
They did, yeah. There wasn't all that much
Yeah.
from The Satanist, but like, I thought, you know, it was a really, really good set. It was really well received. Circle pits and all this kind of thing. You know, people were going. I mean, it felt relatively headliney.
I mean, we talked about the idea of Behemoth filling 5,000 cap Brixton Academy last time when we saw them at the Forum this time last year, and that felt like a possibility, but absolutely nowhere near a done deal.
Yeah.
The idea of them playing in a headline in an arena feels pretty absurd, like kind of absurd. Like, I'm not saying you sound absurd, but the idea of it feels absurd.
I know exactly what you're saying because 24 hours ago I would have said the same thing. But looking at it, it was like, it was really awesome to go, wow, this music can work in this environment. Black metal purists will probably be furious that I'm even suggesting it, but it is. I've seen the evidence. It is possible. I'm not necessarily. I don't know. I don't think arenas are Behemoth's natural place, but it has shown that it can work.
I think there's a few bands from that last decade who could work in an arena. I mean, we're going to, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about Holy Fawn in a bit. And then while I would sort of balk at the idea of solely categorizing Holy Fawn as an extreme metal band, they certainly have elements of it. And you listen to the sound of that and you do think, well, that could work. Like that last Alcest album, that does things that big arena bands do.
In a way, it makes perfect sense if you look at. I mean, Dimmu Borgir are playing tonight in London, and like their massive symphonic metal. You know, that huge expansive sound. In a way, it's kind of perfect for arenas. I guess you've got like, you know, our blast beat is going to work in an arena, and provided the sound is decent, yes, it should work. If that basically, and I was also trying to think, you know, are Behemoth the heaviest band I've seen in an arena? The only other band I could come up with, talking amongst my friends about it, was maybe Gojira, but then I think Behemoth probably are.
Yeah, I think they're definitely more of an extreme band.
Certainly more of an extreme band. I mean, when it comes to heavy, I think they're very, very, very close, but certainly more of an extreme
There's
band.
been a there's you can kind of count on, well, a hand and a half really, of the sort of the bands, genuinely extreme bands who've kind of been plucked from the places they normally reside and have had to go into arenas for whatever reason. I'm thinking of, I mean, In Flames would have been one when they were on, well, I think they would have been on Reroute to Remain, on that Slipknot tour they did back in the kind of early 2000s, and you know, that was it felt like a very odd to have them, and I think it was Raging Speed on In Flames and 1 Minute Silence.
Oh yeah,
Feels like quite an odd bill.
Oh god,
with Slipknot, and then
fuck, that was I forgot all about
Morbid Angel open for Pantera. I saw Satyricon opening for Pantera.
Yeah.
This is Satyricon pre kind of Now Diabolical, so much more when they were, you know, a corpse painty black metal band of sorts. Obviously Napalm Death have done a few of those tours where they've stepped outside of extreme. Well, they play Glastonbury, you know. So there, you know, it's happened before, but it always feels weird. It certainly always feels like an odd thing. I mean, I didn't see Morbid Angel with Pantera, so I can't really comment on that. But I mean, I'm wondering if that would have worked very well at all. I mean, what would be interesting is to see something like Cattle Decapitation opening for a band at Brixton Academy or whatever.
I think, I think some proof in the pudding. I was with someone last night who doesn't usually go in for black metal at all, and she came away from it basically saying, I want to buy their latest album. I think it was like she absolutely adored it. So I think that's an amazing sign. I think that's fantastic.
I think I'm more excited. I mean, I'm actually more excited about seeing Behemoth than in an arena than I am seeing Slipknot, because I've seen Slipknot in an arena about 8 times.
Yeah, it was kind of equal for me. I was as excited as to see both, really.
But I suppose with the new Slipknot album being
good,
much better than certainly a lot better than the last few, then I suppose it is quite exciting. So how were they?
Well, very good, basically. I suppose I need to talk about production, I guess. Lots of screens and different layers, a little bit of pyro, nothing kind of nothing like revolutionary or anything like that, but it did look very cool. Something that I particularly liked, the big kind of, they're not kettle drums, but those big drums that Clown and how he's now been called Tortilla Man kind of play. The sort of the bodies of those drums, I don't think that's the correct terminology, but they were LCD screens. Yeah, I thought it was fucking cool. It was really, really cool, and lots of maggoty imagery and all that kind of thing. Yeah, and it was a good show. I don't think it was quite as memorable. They had that amazing circus style thing for. Was it Chapter 5 or was it All Hope Is Gone? Am I getting mixed up?
That was Chapter 5, yeah.
Yeah, and then what was All Hope Is Gone again? I thought All Hope Was Gone. I can't remember. Anyway,
All Hope Is Gone was when they first headlined Download, and they brought that. There was a big sort of flag thing.
Big flag thing.
Yeah, and then it was a lot of oppressive lights coming out at you.
Yeah,
if I remember rightly.
Yeah. I'd say that this one was less thematic in that sense. But still very cool. It worked really well, and there's kind of not escalators, but they had treadmills, yeah, and stuff like that. And Sid was farting about on those and all that kind of thing. And obviously, you have 9 members, and there's always something to look at and something to see.
Sid at Download. I mean, just to sort of chip in, I saw them at Download, and obviously people know if we listen to my review of them at Download, I thought they were really, really good at Download. It's the best I've seen them for a long time. And that was when I started to get the sense that we might be getting quite a good Slipknot album. Because I think, as I said during the review, having spoken to a few of the guys and them being not different, a lot different to how I've sort of spoken to them before. Plus the Download show, but Sid at the Download show just felt like someone bunking off work for a lot of it. Do you know what I mean? He was just running around a lot. I was like, mate, get back to your fucking things and you're not doing it. Go and get, you know what I mean? You got someone that when you go and work in an office, maybe just keeps getting up and making a coffee. And you're like, what is he even doing?
He was running around a fair amount. I mean, that's an accusation that has always been pointed at Slipknot. They have 9 members. Are they doing things all the time? Well, the answer to that is no, they're not. The percussionists are not always playing, but it would sound like a fucking mess if they were. So, in terms of the new album, they played 4 songs from it, if we're including All Out Life 5, which were Unsainted.
Well, we're not including All Out Life, are we? Surely, because it's not on the album.
All right. Well, it came out in the same cycle.
It came out about 10 months before.
I'd still say that's the same cycle. I mean, they were wearing those masks and all that shite, weren't they? Were they?
No, they didn't have to reveal the mask.
Ah, dearie me. Let's have a punch up about it later. We started with Unsainted, Nero Forte. They played Soulwave Firth, which that is
wicked
such
song.
A good
Spiders,
song.
go on. Tell me they did Spiders.
Come on,
that's my favourite
Spiders, one. No. And Birth of the Cruel.
Oh, yeah.
Felt quite safe, the material they played from the new album, but I enjoyed all of the stuff from the new record, and it was really good to see it. I would have been happy to hear more new stuff personally, but then having said that, it was no. I mean, it didn't compare at all to how I felt when they played anything from the first 3 albums. They played Disaster Piece second, and I have never screamed, "I want to slit your throat and fuck the wound" louder in my life. I mean, I scream that all the time. So,
I was going to say, wow, what a moment.
So, what a moment. And I was just so like, oh my God. Then they went into Eeyore.
Did they?
Yes, fucking please.
Wow.
Fucking bonus track from the self-titled record. I mean, yes, but I was fucking amazing. New Abortion, just taking out the songs that I hadn't heard in fucking years.
Oh, that's cool. That's an accusation that has long been held against it, that they don't mix their set list up enough.
I think it's an accusation that I would tend to agree with. And I mean, even this didn't feel... I want every band to play a different set every night. Now, when it comes to Slipknot and their show and stuff, that's not really possible. It's a tough one. One of the things I was wondering about when coming here was like, because they played for 105 minutes. Their set was 105 minutes. I'd say they played music for just over 90 minutes of that set. We're getting to a point now with Slipknot where you're going to go away. Every time you go and see them, you are going to go away and go, oh, they didn't play that, they didn't play that, they didn't play that. And I was like, am I going to come here and say they should have played longer? But then I was wondering, that's not really realistic. I mean, for the type of band that they are, obviously they're not as extreme and going crazy as they used to and stuff like that. But just Corey's vocal, I mean, listen to my voice today. Just Corey's vocals alone, I don't think we can get a Slipknot doing 2 hours 15, night after night after night after night. I think they can do it from time to time. I think they did with the Knotfest shows. Yeah. But unfortunately, it just isn't practical for Slipknot to do that, which sucks because I would I feel like at this point I could see Slipknot twice in a row do 2 completely different sets where they don't repeat a single song and still probably complain that they didn't play something.
It's quite rare for bands in general now, I've noticed. The kind of bands coming up headlining, you don't really get 2 hour, 2.5 hour, 3 hour sets like you kind of used to. You used to get who is it? Obviously Guns N' Roses did about 2 hours 45.
Yeah.
I think when I saw AC/DC, they did at least 2.5 hours.
Yeah. Pearl Jam do 3 hours.
Pearl Jam do long old sets.
Yeah.
But it feels like it's, quite rare for any bands to kind of go over that before.
I mean, to be fair, length isn't always... The way Steve just looked at me. Set length is not always the be all and end all, as my exes have constantly referred said to me. What am I doing? But it isn't everything, and putting together like a really good set list, there's far more to it than just shoving anything into it. But I don't know. I mean, I would have loved to hear more, but then at the same time, I'm acknowledging that that's actually asking a lot. They play 17 songs.
Yeah, that's
it's not bad.
It's what I expect.
Yeah,
it's longer than. Is it longer? I mean, I remember seeing Bring Me the Horizon, and they barely ticked. I think they just ticked over with the gap between them going off and coming back on for an encore. They just ticked over an hour when they did Wembley.
Yeah, that's risible.
Which
sort yourself out.
Yeah,
sort yourself out.
But maybe,
so they played Vermilion. The last the ending with Eyeless, All Out Life, Duality, Sick, People Equal Shit, Surfacing. Yes, please. It was just fucking wonderful. It was really, really... I would go as far as to say, since Slipknot have been an arena act, it might be the best Slipknot show I've seen. I think it's really unfair to compare them to how they were back in today, because they're a different band, really, weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But in terms of like the arena, like, you know, chapter 5 onwards, or maybe even All Hope Has Gone onwards, I'm not. It was around the same brilliance as seeing them at Hammersmith Apollo on All Hope Has Gone, which was very, very good. That was an amazing show with Machine Head and Children of Bodom.
I stood outside the door. Yeah. I'll be stood outside the O2. If I can't get a ticket on Saturday, I will walk up there and just sort of stand outside the O2, hanging around like a sado. So hopefully, fingers crossed.
But it was fantastic. I mean, spectacle is what you want. Slipknot deliver, and that's why they're massive. You know, massive.
Well, I'll hopefully be able to report back with what I think next week. I'll do it briefly. I'll probably just go, yeah, you were right.
Yeah, I mean, there's no need, is there?
But you
can talk about Psychosocial, because I can't be asked to talk about that song because I think it's stupid.
We're going to see Monster Magnet doing Power Trip in full, aren't we, on Friday? That'd be good.
Funnily enough, I'm as excited about that as I was about Slipknot, which is probably setting myself up for a fall.
Loads of people are like, oh, While She Sleeps, Vain, and Every Time I Die. You're going to go to that, right? And I'm like, no, I'm going to go to Monster Magnet. Which feels kind of ridiculous. I mean, I love Every Time I Die more than I love Monster Magnet.
Yeah,
better band,
same,
and I still haven't seen Vain, but that album is so great.
I thought about
so fucking long.
Yeah, I thought about going to see Vain and then maybe a little bit of Every Time I Die and then fucking off to Monster Magnet, but I don't want the first time I see Vain to be a support slot at Brixton Academy.
No, it'll be.
So I've decided not.
Probably a bit plop.
Yeah.
And then I've got Gorilla Biscuits on Sunday as well, isn't it?
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Anyway, that's next week. We should probably talk about this week and do some reviews. Our first review comes from Renfrey's favourite, the band who made Renfrey's favourite album of the last decade. It's Caspian on Circles. This is the follow-up to Dust and Disquiet from 2015, which was your favourite record of the entire decade. Renfrey, since that is the case, we've spoken about Caspian before. We've spoken about that record a couple of times, but do you just want to fill people in on who Caspian are in case this is the first time they're listening to our podcast?
Sure, they are a 6-piece, broadly instrumental post-rock act, although what the hell that means these days, it's getting harder and harder to define. You did say this is their fifth album, didn't you? Yes. So I think at this point they are considered veterans. I mean, I feel like I've always admired Caspian and always thought they were a really good band, but for me, once they released Dust and Disquiet, their last record, it felt like that they went into the upper echelons of that style of music. I would now put them alongside, in terms of quality, I would put them alongside your Mogwais, your Sigaroses, your This Will Destroy You, blah de blah de blah. Dust and Disquiet was a very difficult album for them to make, I think, because it was effectively a tribute to their old bassist, who was a co-founder of the band. So it was an album that was based around a lot of grief. And On Circles is a very, 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 very different beast, and I think it's always difficult when when a band follow up an album that you absolutely adore.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how difficult that has proven to you, because obviously I heard Dust and Disquiet less than a year ago for the first time when you gave it to me trade-off. Yeah. And I thought, this is really good. Yeah. But I've not had much of a chance ever to go back and really properly listen to it. I don't really feel like I'm that familiar with it, if I'm being perfectly honest, or any of Caspian's material. So this really...
You're coming in fresh.
Yeah, the last few days is the first time where I've really sat down and given it more than, a kind of passing thought, like properly really in one of their albums. So I'll sort of formulate a real opinion of them in the here and now. So I can listen to it and go, oh yes, this is a good record. Whereas you probably have a little bit more stock riding on it.
Yes, very much so. Well, Caspian have done, in my opinion, they've made exactly the right move. And what that move is basically doing something very, very different to Dust and Disquiet. Usually Caspian's records are quite conceptual. They're usually... we've talked about post-rock albums which sound better as a whole, and then when you take like a song out of it, it will still have an impact, but it will have more of an impact if you listen to it as part of the record as a whole, in sequence and all that kind of sequencing and all that sort of thing in post-rock is often very important. Not always, but often. This is an album which very much feels like you could take songs out of it individually and they'd have as much impact as if you were listening to it on the album. Each song is kind of its own sort of individual island, I guess. And I have to say, initially, probably just because I tend to go more towards that more conceptual, grander journey of an album, blah, 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 blah. Disappointed is definitely way OTT, because I haven't been disappointed with this record at all. But it wasn't. It's not the direction that tends to be towards my taste. However, having it, I've had it for about 6 weeks, and just played it over and over and over and over again, and I absolutely adore this album. I think it's wonderful. It's not, it's not a Dust and Disquiet beater for me, but nor does it try to be, and I don't think I think it's quite obviously not trying to be. Yeah,
it feels quite different from what I remember of that record. It's certainly less it was quite, Dust and Disquiet felt quite a tormented record at points.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that, what you were saying about it being about loss and grief and all those kind of things made a lot of sense, because I do remember thinking in my head going, they can get pretty heavy, and nothing on this really gets hugely wild or heavy, I would say. Especially, it's not a massively loud album. Like you get some post-rock albums, and I think they can get exceptionally loud when they want to. This feels like a much more... is mellow the right word? I'm not sure if mellow is the right word, but definitely more relaxed record.
I understand what you're saying.
The mood feels much more inviting.
I think overall, yes. I think the one exception to that would be Collapser, which is track 6.
Yeah, Collapser's great.
Oh, it's fucking brilliant, isn't it?
It's fucking great.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to let you talk more about this record, to be fair. Because
no, you go for it.
But what I will say is, the first 2 songs, I came in with kind of knowing that you would like it because how much you like them, and probably thinking that usually when a band as good as this and a band that someone loves so much comes back with another album, you got to fuck it up pretty bad for that person to be like, oh no, no.
Yeah.
And within a few minutes, I was like, I feel like Renfrew will probably really love this. 2 tracks in, I was so sold on it. I thought it was fucking great. Like, it feels like, again, we say it quite a lot about post-rock or instrumental music, in that it's cinematic, and it feels like you're walking along a scene in your own sort of private movie. And I think there is a grandiosity to those first songs, and they do stuff, how they build things is... I can't really put my finger on exactly what it is, but it feels like they're just better at building momentum. They're just better at filling space than a lot of the bands that you've brought me. I have to say, it dipped a little bit for me, and I felt like I got pulled out of it when the vocals came in.
Ah, that's interesting, because I half agree with you, actually. Yeah.
I think the last song, Circles on Circles, is very much like you said, it's a great album closer.
Yeah.
And a great song in isolation. And I think Nostalgist is the other one, which features...
Yes, Kyle Durfee from Pianos Become the Teeth.
Yeah, which, with repeated listens, I've listened to this album 6 times, or maybe 7 times now all the way through. With repeated listens, I like the song a lot. I think it's a good song. But it does shake me out of what you said about the flow of the album. It really shook me out of the flow of the record. I was so in on those first 2 tracks. And then when the vocals came in, I did go, well, this is quite different.
I actually agree with you. One of the few negatives, because I really didn't want to come into this and just be positive. And one of the few, and it's a relatively minor negative point, but one of the few ones was yeah, that third track does it's built up so wonderfully with those first two songs over sort of 14, 15, 16 minutes. And then I think that third track, it doesn't put a full stop on it, but it does like massively put the brakes on.
How good those first two tracks are, because it's actually only 12 minutes.
Ah, there you go. Yeah. It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't put a full stop on the album at all, but it does. It puts the brakes on a little bit, and I think everything you're saying is right. In isolation, I think that song is brilliant. I think it's actually really, really beautiful. It's just in terms of sequencing, it just appears. It just fucks up the momentum ever so slightly on the record. I wouldn't want the song not to be on the album, but I don't know where you'd put it. I don't know where the best place for it would be. Yeah,
I mean, they released Circles on Circles before the album came out.
Yeah.
So I heard Circles on Circles, and I was like, and that's when I was like, well, this is not what I thought it was going to be at all.
Yeah.
But I like the song,
yeah.
and I think it works.
It's a beautiful ender,
and it works as a great album closer.
Yeah.
And even though it is very different to the rest of the record, bar Nostalgist, I think it's really good.
I think
but
that
you're right.
works,
It's like, it does. But Nostalgist, it does. I mean, Wild Blood and Flowers Are Light, the first two songs, are so absorbing.
Yeah.
Like so
They're
unbelievably
wonderful.
absorbing.
Wildflowers kind of like, it comes in on a pulsing electronic synth, and then jazzy kind of saxophones come in, and it just builds and builds and builds. And Flowers of Light is just a fucking masterpiece.
Amazing guitar line that runs kind of throughout it, which sort of slowly morphs over the course of 5 minutes, but just sort of stays there, which sort of underpins everything. It's fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
So brilliant, that song.
Yeah.
That like you say, that first 1-2 punch of the opening of the record, I was like, wow, this is exceptional.
Yeah.
And then I went, oh, it's a sort of pop song. Not a pop song, but like a kind of folky.
More
like
so.
Folky. Yeah, more. It's a more traditional song.
Yeah. Well, do you know Pianos Become the Teeth much?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
There, it is, maybe it's down to Kyle's vocals. He's a great lyricist and a great vocalist, but it actually does sound like a Pianos song certainly from the last two records. They changed their sound quite exponentially for their third album, but it does sound like a Pianos Become the Teeth song, and I love Pianos Become the Teeth, particularly those last two records, but it does throw you a little bit. I have to say, I've listened to this out. I don't know how many times I've listened to this album, but probably 5 or 6 times as much as you have. It becomes less jarring the more you listen to it.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah, but I understand exactly what you're saying, and I do agree.
It's weird. I feel like the album almost comes in sort of pockets of two that are broken up by, because I think Collapser and Ishmael together really work well together.
Ishmael is my favourite song on the record.
I thought it might be.
Fucking incredible.
It's the longest one. But it is incredible, you're right. Yeah. And it's and those two feel like almost like I feel like Wild Blood and Flowers of Light and then Collapse and Ishmael could almost be 2 EPs. Released on their own.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they've been put in the album, and they're sort of broken up by like Circles and Circles coming after that, and Nostalgia's coming after it. Does kind of, I mean, obviously Circles and Circles doesn't break it up, it just ends the record. But it feels like a very definite full stop after Ishmael finishes to end on Circles and Circles. Feels like a very definite full stop to the record.
Yeah.
I really like it though. I think I think every song on the record is good in isolation, and the bits where it gels into an album or a sort of series of EPs are brilliant as well. If it's better than the last one, I don't feel qualified to say. But I do like it a lot. I think it's very, very good. This.
I think it partly comes down to and I think it's kind of irrelevant if it's better than Dust on Disquiet or not. I mean, I almost didn't want to bring it up, but
it's impossible not to bring it up after you've given it.
When you adore a record as much as I do Dust and Disquiet, it is very, very difficult to not compare the two. And as I said at the top of this review, they did the exact correct quote unquote thing in not trying to make Dust and Disquiet Part 2. They've gone down a totally different route. And whilst initially it was a little jarring for me, I realised that upon repeated listens, this is exactly what they should have done. And, you know, they've to be honest, it's really encouraging to see that Caspian are still breaking out and doing new things. There's a song on the album, is it Onzra,
Yeah.
where there's a podcast series that accompanies this album called Talking in Circles.
Right.
There we go. Very good. Conversations with Caspian. And it's very good. There's only been 3 episodes released as we record this, but it's very, very interesting. I learned on that at any one time there could be up to 4 guitarists in Caspian, because they're like quite a lot of them are like multi-instrumentalists and stuff like that, but they can have anything from 2 to 4 guitars. And for that, like, most of them just dropped their guitars and took up synths just to take them out of their comfort zone. And the fact that like Caspian are aware that they need to keep changing things up and they need to keep progressing forward rather than doing the same thing over and over again. They're aware. They actually mention on that podcast the whole kind of quiet, loud, quiet dynamic that is so prevalent in post-rock. They sort of said that we have a rule where we only allow ourselves to do that once on every album.
It shows as well.
Yeah, because you can see, and that's why Caspian are better than most of their contemporaries, because you can see that they're going, right, this is what everyone else does. We can employ that trick once or twice because there's a reason why everyone does it, but that then let's try and figure out other ways to have an impact and an emotional resonance which doesn't involve using the same old tricks that you've heard time and time again. And that's why they are one of the best bands at doing this.
They're very good, and this album is great.
It's fantastic.
It's
I mean,
really good.
You know, and I was thinking, like, we've had Trail of Dead. I'm going to throw Beach Slang in there as well, and we've had this. We've had this.
Aiming for Enrique. If you're going to throw Beach Slang in,
sure.
well.
I'm happy to throw Aiming for Enrique. I mean, last year was a slow start to the year. We're not even out of January yet, and we've got 4 records that maybe more that we could call like excellent releases, which you definitely should listen to. Yeah. I think is fair to say. It's a really good start to the year. Yeah, it's a really good start.
We've also heard some stuff, I think, which is fucking amazing coming out as well.
Yep.
So yes, there you go. On Circles by Caspian. Their 5th record is out right now. Certainly worth a listen, I would say, even if you're not hugely interested in sort of underground instrumental post rock. I still think this is something which you might dig, so go and have a little listen. The next album comes from Higher Power, 27 Years Underwater, the 2nd record from the Leeds-based melodic hardcore crew, the follow-up to 2017 Soul Structure, an album that I was pretty keen on, I have to say. One that I thought showed more promise than anything really concrete.
Yeah.
But having seen Higher Power a few times, I thought they were loads of fun.
Yeah.
And they're one of many bands over the last few years, kind of cool young bands who have signed to Roadrunner. So this album's out on Roadrunner. They joined the likes of Code Orange, Turnstile, Marmozets, Creeper, just some of their contemporaries that have come through in the last few years to sign to Roadrunner Records. And I guess if you were to compare them most to one of those bands, the obvious one is Turnstile.
It's difficult not to. I remember the first time I saw this band, actually, it was with you. Cancer Bats.
Cancer Bats, the House of Vans.
House of Vans, yeah.
I'd seen them a few times before that. Actually,
yeah.
I was always like, they're good. I saw them at Download on the 4th stage and they were fucking excellent.
Right.
Yeah, really good.
I knew of Higher Power, but for whatever reason, I just hadn't checked out the record and all this kind of thing. And I was there. And like, this is fucking awesome, and I bought the record there and then and all that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, I remember you did.
Really enjoyed it. I think Soul Structure is a really good record. The Turnstile comparison is very tricky to not ignore, to ignore, you know, isn't it? But that's fine because Turnstile are fucking great.
Turnstile are wicked.
So, you know.
Turnstile are a wicked band. I think what I would probably say straight away is Turnstile are probably certainly on the last Turnstile album, they exhibited a hell of a lot of ambition and a lot of different ideas. And, you know, Time and Space is one of those records that you go, that feels like a blueprint, a sort of a fork in the road for what can be done with quite a limited genre.
Yeah.
And I think Higher Power have kind of taken that idea and ran with it a bit. But I think it's quite hard to run as far as Turnstile did on that last record.
I think to their credit, Higher Power have not, you know, this doesn't feel like Soul Structure Part 2.
No.
They have definitely tried to do something a bit different and a bit new.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, the first time I listened to this record, I was really unsure about it. They have, well, to be honest, they've brought in some very, very poppy elements, haven't they?
Yeah. I mean, the first few songs they released, I listened to.
Seamless was the first one, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I was a bit like, this is very poppy. This is very melodically inclined. Which is, you know, that's their prerogative. That's fine.
Yeah, that's
fine.
fine.
If they want to do that, as long as they're good, you know, the songs are good, then you should write whatever you want to write. But I was like, I wonder if it's going to be a sort of full-blown, almost pop-punk album. I don't think it is.
No, I don't think it is, but there are definitely pop-punk moments.
Yeah, for sure. But there are some other moments as well that are not like that at all, which I'm delighted that they haven't just gone, chuck the baby out of the bathwater.
Yeah.
This is a funny record because I feel like it's much more commercially viable for Higher Power now. And I think that was probably inevitable when you signed to Roadrunner Records. Kind of inevitable. That you would have the sort of ability and the sort of structure around you to be able to go, what can we do that's going to get us in front of more people, that's going to get us on more people's headphones? What can we, you know? I could see them going out and touring with. I'm trying to think of like a newer, sort of someone like Newfound Glory.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that would be too weird a fit to put them on with Newfound Glory.
No. During Soul Structure, I don't think if it was during Soul Structure, I might have raised an eyebrow, but now definitely not. No.
But at the same time, I mean, there's songs in this like Passenger, which I think is a great song.
Yeah,
and that really and there's a difference between pop punk and bouncy hardcore. There's a reason I put this H2O album behind us this week.
I thought so.
And you know, all of those bands from the 90s that kind of took hardcore and made it way more melodic. Dog Eat Dog, I know Dog Eat Dog is a dirty word to some people, not to me. Shelter were a massive one on Soul Structure. I thought, you know, the Shelter comparisons were so clear in my head. Civ, you know, all that shit. And I love all that stuff.
Quicksand?
You know?
Would you put Quicksand in there?
Not really, because Quicksand that's more sort of introspective and emo. Like,
fair enough.
You know, Civ is fun. It's summer punk rock, summertime.
Fair.
You know, big chunky bouncy riffs and stuff, and there's all that, and Self-Rendered Lost also features some really excellent, almost Jerry Cantrell, that kind of wailing, like that grungy guitar tone, before it all kicks off. And when it kicks off, like, you know, it's chunky. It's got plenty of chug and chunk and bounce and that kind of that New York hardcore swagger.
Yeah,
it's still on this record. So when they do go poppy, it doesn't bother me as much.
No, I think on first listen, I was very much. Well, I like half of that album, and I really dislike the other half of the album. But playing it more and more and more, I'm beginning to like the whole thing a lot more. The there is one song that I do have to point out, which I think is a total failure. And I'm curious about your opinion on this. The In the Meantime.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a kind of pretty acoustic-y emo ballad thing. Maybe something along the lines of what Dashboard Confessional would do, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a bit harsh?
I think it's a little bit. I think that's a little bit harsher compared to Dashboard Confessional.
Okay.
I would say more like crap acoustic Green Day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I don't think it's terrible. I just don't think it's
well
what Higher Power should be doing.
No, it's pretty wet. I mean, that does stand out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, it's a really odd moment. And when I first listened to this, there were a few times which made me kind of look at the screen just a bit like, that's weird. But I've now that I've got to know the songs a bit better, I actually really like those moments. But that is, In the Meantime, is a song where every time it comes on, like, no, it doesn't work.
I mean, mate, I have to say, like, overall, because when we first chatted about this, I mean, I nearly went, or having heard the singles, I was nearly like, mate, maybe we should give it a miss, because I like the last record. I didn't want to come in here and slag it off. And I'm really glad to say that I like it.
Yeah,
and I like
do
the
too.
ambition. I like the fact that they haven't completely done away, that they've evolved, and it feels like they got a bit more nous, but they've not given up the bounce, they've not given up the crunch from that first album. It feels like it's still connected enough to all the good things from that last album.
Definitely.
But it's got more of a sort of wider sonic palette. Most of it works. I would say you're right. In the meantime, maybe kind of like for and this is our personal taste. I'm sure there will be people who will go, oh, that's got to be the single. It's great. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm
to
sure
be
there
fair,
will be people.
long-term listeners will know that neither me or Steve are massive pop punk fans. I mean, I don't think that song is pop punk.
It's not really pop punk, is it? It's just kind of, the thing about High Power is that, like, it's weird because it's a bit wet, that song. I can't really describe it any better than that. It's just, it's a bit wet, and they're not a wet band.
No.
Like, the whole thing feels really kind of strutting.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It kind of
doesn't
bounces.
work.
It's like, it just kind of glides down the road, and sort of, it's got this lovely sort of swagger to it. It's got this really fun, lovely swagger to it.
Yeah.
And then that song all feels a bit like, a bit coy, and
yeah,
it just doesn't really work. But
very few bands are able to do everything. I don't think any band is able to do everything. And it just shows to me that Higher Power are one of those bands that don't do that particular thing very well. But it's one song, and it's like 3 minutes of a 35-minute record or whatever. But it is difficult to review this album and not mention it, because, as you say, it sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, and it's because everything else is really good.
Yeah,
even the sort of pop punky
yeah.
stuff, which is not what I would normally go mad for. Like, there is enough. I mean, but really for me, the best stuff is where it's like,
I agree.
Yeah, and it's and it's got some really, really catchy melodies. It's got some great choruses on it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really, we've compared it to Turnstile a little bit. I think Turnstile are, I would say way more ahead of Higher Power.
Yeah.
But they're a few albums further down the line as well, aren't they?
No, they're not. Well, now they've both got two.
Yeah, that's true. Turnstile have been a band longer than at least.
Yes, definitely.
But
also, I would say, like, I mean, what is really encouraging about this record is they've gone into on a slightly different path than I mean, when Soul Structure came, whilst I responded really positively to Soul Structure, I think if someone had told me it was a Turnstile album, I probably would have believed them, to be honest. Whereas this, I wouldn't believe you if it was a Turnstile album, but I'd believe it was influenced by Turnstile. But that's a good progression to have.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, for sure. I think this is better than the last record,
I think I agree. It's weird in that, it's a weird one in that they've gone in directions that aren't personally to my taste, but if I'm totally honest, I think the songwriting is better.
Yeah.
And as a result, it's still
bit
growing.
More experience, a bit more nous, like all those things is definitely true.
It's still
Sounds
growing.
good as well, doesn't it?
Sounds
really
great.
Good, yeah.
It's still growing on me, this record, and it could be one of those ones that, further down the line becomes a real surprise, and I go, actually, that is a really fucking amazing record. I can feel that it is still I'm not. I haven't. My love for it hasn't completely blossomed. Yeah, Jesus Christ, I put that in a wanky way. But I haven't got everything out of it that I'm going to yet, and I can tell that, and that's really encouraging because I like it. I like it very much, and I like it a lot more than I did the first time I listened to it, where I was on the fence. So
yeah, me too. I was kind of a bit worried about this, and I'm glad. I don't really know why, because I didn't hate the sort of songs that came out. I just thought, it's quite different if they do a whole album of that. Or maybe not. But
from the people I've spoken to about this, a lot of people have been a bit worried after hearing the singles, and I don't think there's as much need to be as you might think.
Yeah. So there you go. 27 Years Underwater by Higher Power, not Howard Power.
Howard Power.
Higher Power is out right now. Okay. Right. Here we go. Let's move on to our next record. This actually came out last week. It comes from Pine Grove. The album is called Marigold. Came out last week on Rough Trade. It's the fourth album from the New Jersey collective. It is also the first album the band have released, and I think we need to kind of preface this review with saying this. It is the first album since singer Evan Stevens Hall became embroiled in a controversy regarding his, as he put it on his own words, on a lengthy Facebook post before the band went off on a year-long hiatus. I think it was in 2017. Evan Stevens Hall said he had been involved in sexual coercion. The band went away and have come back, and it seems like, listen, we are not, for what it's worth, in the business of trying to determine exactly what that was or what that means.
No, it's not been made clear what it was.
But it's obviously something, I think, that we had to mention because, one, I think people would have tweeted us about it and gone, why didn't you mention that? And two, for my money, it's certainly something which has informed the record, which even Evan has mentioned himself. I think if you want to read more into it and find out what the situation was, you should go and read an excellent piece in the New Yorker regarding their comeback, titled Pine Grove Stages a Complicated Comeback, which is a really fair and balanced piece, I think, which questions Evan a lot about what has happened in the last couple of years, what did happen to make the band go on hiatus, and why we should be listening to them now. I'm always very much of a separate the art from the artist type of guy, but it's quite difficult to separate the art from the artist when the art is the artist. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is one of those bands, we've discussed it, Menzingers, it seems to come up a lot, where it's like, it's a very kind of personal, if you like it, it's probably because you have a sort of personal connection with the songs, isn't it? And the Pine Grove would definitely fit into that kind of. I'm not saying they're like a Americana like type of band like the Menzingers.
They are a bit though, aren't they?
A little bit, yeah. But they're different in that it's
not as raucous. It's not really as punk rock.
It's not as raucous. Well, certainly this album. I mean, this album is by far their most kind of measured and subtle to date.
I mean, I have to say, I knew nothing of this. I really knew nothing of this band, but listening to it without any context at all, when I first listened to it, the first song, Dotted Line, grabbed me straight away. There's lyrics in it that I just thought were great, which, in the night when I feel your absence, like a dotted line across my shoulder, like a silver vision across the desert, may no memory hold my head up. Now the endless night, and I lift my head up, where beyond my window a thread of light lives, with Manhattan Island on the horizon. No, may no memory hold my head up, nor may no fantasy fold my head in. And I read that and I thought, that is beautifully poetic,
lovely,
and a really lovely, quite romanticized piece of sort of text and lyrics. And I thought, this feels like somebody who has some sort of something going on in their head. I didn't quite know what it was. I have to say, as I said, this album was written after a huge period of self-reflection. It's a record, to me, of someone who really doesn't seem to like themselves very much.
Yeah.
And
very similar to a lot of these kind of emo records, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
In that sense.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. But I mean, I listened to this 3 or 4 times without knowing any of the story or any of the backstory regarding the band. And then I found that stuff out because I was interested in the band, because I called you and I think we had a chat and I said, I love this record.
You did.
I think it's fucking great.
Which, if you don't mind me saying, I was surprised, not because I don't think the record's any good, because I like it very much as well. I don't think I like it as much as you, but I do like it very much. I think it's very good. But I was really unsure about your reaction to this.
Why is that, Renfrew? Because I would like to think at this
Because you're
point,
Mr. Hardcore.
Well, I would like to think at this point it's been more than proven as a
No. Yeah, I'm being facetious. I thought it might be a little bit too wet for you, and a band that it really reminded me of was American Football.
Yeah.
I think it's in the same kind of emo realms as American Football.
Death Cab for Cutie.
Yeah.
Bright Eyes.
Bright Eyes, sure.
I like all that stuff.
Yeah, but the last American Football record you were ho-hum on.
Yeah,
the last Death Cab for Cutie album you were ho-hum on. So
I think kind of not so great latter day material from those bands is yeah. But in general, like, it's not a type of thing that I dislike, and it's got some really interesting instrumentation, some great kind of extra bits in it.
The unique selling point with Pine Grove, I think, is they and they always have had this. They have a kind of country and western tinge to what they do, mainly because they have a recording lineup and they have a touring lineup. I don't know if you know this, but the recording lineup I think is 6 or 7 people. I think the touring lineup's 5, but regardless, they have a pedal steel guitarist in the band and they have a lap steel in the band, and just those instruments alone, just because of their close ties and association with country and western, it just gives it this country and western tinge to it, which for me gave it a really different flavour. Yeah. It is, as I say, it is their USP.
And it's something like, obviously, my girlfriend's from South Carolina. I have to listen to some country music sometimes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's been something which I've started finding myself like, it's not really something that I would usually listen to, like modern country music, but I have found myself, because of her, listening to more of that stuff, and I'm starting to get a bit of a feel for it. So hearing a kind of emoed up version of it, I was like, yeah, I like this. This is really good. It's really interesting. And I kind of played it to her and she went, yeah, this is really good.
Yeah,
and then we both had the sort of revelation of this, and then we both went, ah. And she said, for what it's worth, and she told me I could say this, obviously, we don't really know what went on in this sexual coercion thing, but she said it's not affected her enjoyment of the record at all. Obviously, that's just her, but she said it's not really changed how she felt about the record at all.
What about you?
A little bit.
Has it?
Yeah, a little bit. It's weird because I normally come on in and go, it doesn't matter, let people do whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, you feel what you feel.
Yeah.
I listened to it and I thought, this guy feels like he feels like a very sensitive young man. Listening to it now, it's a weird one because it's quite easy to listen to. It's quite an uplifting record in some parts.
In some ways. In some parts, yeah. But
there's obviously a bit of remorse in this record, but that isn't the overriding feeling I get from it.
Okay. What is
it feels, I often get it's a feeling of a record of someone who feels like they've been a bit hard done by.
Oh. Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like the second song, Spiral, which is a great song.
It's like 48 seconds long or something.
Yeah, but it manages to do
a lot in 48
seconds, and it's really good. And it's a list of good posture, drink water, and it's just and it's sort of, it feels like someone who's saying, I have lost the ability to function as a normal human being.
Yeah.
And that and that's
an amazing thing to convey in 48 seconds.
Yeah, it really is. And the last song, Neighbour, which is obviously, I think it's a great song. It's the second to last song, actually, because there's a sort of instrumental out.
Sorry, yeah.
But it's obviously a metaphor. It's a kind of metaphorical story about his next door neighbour killing a bird. And he says he loves the bird, but he says he loves his neighbour as well. And it's obviously meant to mean something else. And it's obviously the words of someone who is incredibly torn up inside. Now, I get the feeling some of this lyrically, knowing what we know about this person, or from what I deduce a lot of the album to be about, like I say, I don't think it's all remorse. I think a lot of it is poor me. I think some of that might rub people up the wrong way. There were points on it where there were bits that I really liked that I heard in a different light, and it didn't really, it didn't really affect my enjoyment of it as a piece of music. It just made me feel about it in a slightly different way. And for what it's worth, we can only point out whether or not the album is successful in conveying those emotions musically. And I think it is. I think it is. And the more I listen to it, I do think this is a very honest record. Very, very honest.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's not going, oh, God, I was awful and I'm sorry. It's not doing that, really. And on one hand, you kind of have to go, okay, well, good. You're being really honest, because I don't really feel like you are completely... Like, this is an album where he goes, fucking hell, I've been such a dick and I feel sorry. Do you know what I mean? I don't necessarily feel all that. And the more I listen to it and think it's an honest record, the more I go, cool, I'm going to find some of this quite hard to go back to, just because it's not even that I don't like it musically. I mean, like I say, sure, separate the art from the artist a lot of time, but so much of this is like, I feel it is him going, oh man, I've had a really tough time.
I think in a way that's kind of fair enough, and it's a very interesting... I mean, this is an interesting record from the point of view that it's one of the first post-Me Too albums, isn't it?
Well, all this happened to him around the same time as... we spoke about Brand New and Jessie Lacey, and I was like, well, if you like it. But, comparatively, not from what I've read and from the way that the two people dealt with it, I think Evan, obviously, he says that this was he was in a relationship and he did everything for love, and he was just completely unaware that what he was doing was wrong.
That's something that I wanted to point out and say. A lot of people had criticisms about the manner in which Jessie Lacey from Brand New dealt with those accusations. I personally think that it wasn't as bad as a lot of people have made out, but I do understand the criticisms.
Ultimately, as well, just to jump
That's
in,
it.
what Jessie Lacey did
is
bad, isn't it? Like, do you know what I mean?
Is
we don't really know
yeah.
the scenario.
Yeah.
Nobody's come out into the scenario of what happened in this situation. And also, just before you move on, I will let you chat. I think it's important to say that this is obviously one side of this story.
Yeah.
We don't have an album or a piece of art chartering the events from the other side of the fence.
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely worth pointing that out. And I guess, without wanting to sound like a cliche or anything, that is the privilege, quote unquote, of the artist who is still continues to be in a position of power at this point.
I think what I admired about Evan Stephen Hall and his statement, though, was he went into, whilst we don't know what the accusation was and the nature of it and all that sort of thing, I don't think we need to.
No.
He went into far more detail than he needed to, I think. And he could have... There was a sense with Jessie Lacey that because it was stuff that happened years and years and years ago, he was like, oh, well, that was stuff that happened a long, long time ago, and I've, repented for my sins for that now, and like it's something that I want to put behind me. And there were things that were in Evan's status on Facebook, which I thought you didn't have to tell us that, and that's not necessarily painting you in a good light, but you've chosen to because you realise that you did something wrong and you messed up. And I think that, if you have to have, I believe people should be allowed to be redeemed. And in the manner, we do not know what this thing was, but it does sound like it was a breakdown in communication. And I've had plenty of breakdowns of communication in relationships in the past. Does that make me a bad person? I don't think it does, but this is an inevitability of relationships and people getting close and being together. Sometimes communication is going to break down,
And also, although it does all feel... I'm putting that now at the forefront of my mind when I listen to the record, unfortunately, and only because I've read that that's supposed to be chartering, the last year of his life, and it feels like it's informed it. But really, I guess once you know that, you do go looking for stuff, and maybe I'm looking into stuff too much.
Yeah,
Who
maybe.
knows? Potentially I am. I don't know. We don't really know.
But a lot of great emo stuff. I mean, we talked about Neutral Milk Hotel quite recently, and in the lyricism of this record, there is that sort of esoteric quality. There's a really fine line between having esoteric lyrics where you know that they're about something, but you're not quite sure what they are, and it just sounding like total wank, which you can't relate to at all.
Yeah.
And I think Pine Grove, like Natural Milk Hotel, are one of those bands who brilliantly kind of, this is about something. It isn't totally clear what it is, but the images and the poetry conjured are good enough and intriguing enough to make you want to look into it further, rather than just to make you go, oh, I can't be fucked with this, because this, you trust the author, I guess. You trust that there is some deeper meaning in all of this, I guess.
Listening to the record, I believe all of that, and I believe it is honest. And I mean, do you like the record?
I do. I think this is a good record. I'm familiar with their older material as well, and it's a slight left turn for them, in that, as I said, it is their most subtle.
It's not from what I understand, is they were a bit more of a sort of celebratory band.
They were, to be honest with you, Steve, they were a bit more pop punk. I mean, they were actually very good. I actually always thought they were very, very, very good pop punk, sort of in a Wonder Yearsy type manner. But they were a bit more. I mean, they've always been an interesting band because of those country and western elements. But on this record, it's the elements that they've been pushed to the fore. And I had a bit of a different experience with this album when I first listened to it, because it's quite different to how I expected it to be. Do you know what a good comparison is something to write, Get Up Kids, something to write home about, to On a Wire. This is On a Wire.
Right, okay.
And their previous stuff is something to write home about.
Right.
That is the stylistic jump, and almost exact. I've just thought of that, but that is actually very accurate. Okay, I would say. I actually wrote in my notes. I mean, I was not sure whether to say this or not, but in a way, this band sound a little bit like Jimmy Eat World meets Mumford and Sons, which might put off some people, but it's not. I actually mean that as a positive. It's Jimmy Eat World with banjos. It's Jimmy Eat World with lap steel guitar and stuff like that, and it's cool. It does make them sound different from other bands like this. There's that band Pile that you really, really adored. You know, there are elements of Pile here as well. And I do think this is a very good album. I'm not sure if I like it quite as much as you, but you know, there are some amazing lines in it. I wrote down from Hairpin, I woke up grinding my teeth with you next to me, just smiling. My friend through hairpin bends, you do upend my island. You know, just like there's some really beautiful poetry.
Yeah,
and
some amazing songs on it. I think The Alarmist, Dotted Lines is a great opener. Like, just grabbed me straight away. The Alarmist, I think, is brilliant. I spoke about Spiral.
What's that last song called? The instrumental?
Marigold is the title track.
Marigold,
6 minutes.
6 minute Marigold. I mean, that, sorry to throw it into everything, but that is a post-rock song, and it's fucking great.
Oh, definitely it is. Yeah,
it's fucking awesome. Yeah, I really, really like it. It's a really good enter to the song, to the album.
Yeah. So there you go. It's a bit of a weird one, that. Like, I've obviously come in and I feel like I've just spoken more about stuff like 3 years ago, and I don't mean to do that, because ultimately, this is a good record.
Yeah, it's
really,
good.
really good record. It's a well-made record, it's a thoughtful record, it's a very accomplished record, songwriting-wise, and it is, for better or worse, chartering with total honesty a very difficult period in the creator's life. Now, is that enough for you? Is that okay for you to listen to it? That's absolutely not my call. It's going to be your call. And if you go, do you know what, I don't feel comfortable doing that, that's fine. I still think this is a really good record, and I'm pretty sure I will still continue to listen to it. But the context of it changed how I felt about the record. And not necessarily changed how I felt about the record in a negative way, but it made me see the lyrics in a slightly different way.
Interesting.
which is interesting. But I am not here to, as we've said a whole bunch of times, I'm not here to pour over internet tittle tattle.
We're not judge, jury, and executioner, especially when there's no actual. I mean, we don't even know what the allegations are. We know the nature of them, but we don't know what the actual allegation is. So I would say if you are unsure about listening to the rest of this record, the two things to read are that New Yorker article that you mentioned and his Facebook statement, which I actually think was, very well written and conceived and very thoughtful and generally very well done, basically.
I have to say, the last paragraph of the New Yorker article is like so perfectly sums up everything regarding how people deal with bands that have become problematic. It is really good.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's move on. That is Marigold by Pine Grove. Another one that came out last week was Holy Fawn's The Black Moon.
Another bloody surprise release.
The 3-track EP that follows Hot on the Heels of 2018's Death Spells, an album that both Renfrey and I drooled over when we got our hands on it at the start of last year. It's never really gone away, I think, for either of us. It is a brilliant record.
It was in my albums of the decade, and I feel like I listen to it constantly, and I absolutely adore it, and I adore this band, and you do too, and we're excited.
I think essentially what we've got here is 3 more songs that would have fit very snugly onto that record, and if that sounds like a diss, then it definitely isn't. I mean, they do a thing that I don't like. I mentioned them earlier when we were talking about Behemoth, and obviously they're very, very different from Behemoth. But
very different.
Very, very different. But the fact that I can't really work out if they're an indie band or an extreme metal band or a sort of goth band says quite a lot, really, doesn't it? I mean, this is just wonderfully bleak, dark, heavy, anthemic, cinematic, stirring.
They're experts at making beautiful things sound heavy.
Yeah, they really
like
are.
That's what I adore about them. Like, I don't think they do it in the same way, but something that I adore, and I think you do too, about Deftones is how they make beauty sound fucking crushingly heavy. And Holy Fawn, in a slightly different way, do exactly that. And I'm just a sucker for it. I fucking love it.
Brilliant. I mean, the first track, Candy, is so somber and slow, and it's got this, and that is all just like this building wall of sound, and it's got this cymbal, right, that just kind of goes and goes and goes, this sort of seemingly never-ending crash cymbal that goes throughout the sort of most of the song. And then this like proper brutal, when that goes, this massive scream comes in, and it's not really been metal heavy until that point, and then it's like but it's always just so foreboding and dark, and then it all ends in this big sort of almost industrial drum tattoo. It's fucking great.
Is that the sort of militaristic beat?
Sort of it's sort of this it's great. It's just such it's amazing, that song. Amazing.
Candy's wonderful. Really, really good song. Tethered, the second song, it's more of an interlude, really.
Yeah, it's 2.5 minutes?
Yeah, but it's a very pleasant one, and it ties it all together very nicely. And then it goes into Blood Pact, which begins in a very, very subdued fashion.
80s synthy, innit?
Yeah.
Like dark-ass 80s.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stuff. Great.
But it builds into an almighty crescendo towards the end.
Those screams come back in at the end.
Yeah.
It's almost like those... You know when the Cure do those kind of, and Smashing, that sort of Cure Smashing Pumpkins wash guitar.
Yeah.
That almost, it doesn't really sound like a guitar. It just sounds like walls shaking, but like walls made out of silver. You know what I mean? Like you say, it's heavy and beautiful at the same time, and they just melt you with that for ages. And then when the screams come back in over, like at the end, to sort of play the whole EP out, I was just like, this band are incredible.
Yeah, they really are. They really are fucking amazing. And just, I mean, this is, like you said, 3 tracks. It's 15 and a half minutes, but, it's probably been one of the best things that's been released this year.
Yeah.
Which I think...
I mean, this is going to take some fucking topping for the best EP of the year already.
Yeah.
Well, we had AA Williams was our favourite EP of last year, and that came out in January. And I think I was like, that's that done then, isn't it?
Yeah. It's fucking wonderful. I don't know what it is. Is it a stopgap release? Is it something to tie us? Is it because they're on tour in America with Thrice and Me Without You and someone? It's like a dream lineup. It's a dream lineup for me. I'm very angry that I'm not living in America. Is it? Have they released it just to have new stuff to play for that tour? I don't know, but also I don't care. We've got new Hurley 4 material. It doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah, it's really good. And I did sort of go like, what is it? Is this leftovers from the last record, or is it a new thing they just show? And often, you get these EPs that come out so soon after, you don't really know what they're about, and it's just like something that's been hanging around. But this just feels fucking brilliant.
Brilliant. It's really good. I don't know what it is, but it's really, really good. The only thing I really, please come to the UK, Holy.
Yeah, I know, right?
Please fucking come over.
They haven't, have they?
No.
Mental.
No, I don't think they've been over at all. And I just...
Considering Holy Raw re-released this,
you
would think they would come over.
Yeah, please
Twats.
come over.
No, you're not twats. Come over. I won't call you twats.
You'll be welcome. It'll be fine.
So anyway, the Holy 4 and the Black Moon. There's nothing else to really say about it. We love the album. We love the EP.
Yeah.
Do not sleep on this band. They are exceptional.
Yeah.
Absolutely exceptional.
Their first EP, Realms, is wonderful as well. They haven't. I don't think they've released a bad song.
Yeah. There you go. I would say that's 4 from 4, Renfrew, for me.
Pretty much
this week.
Yeah,
really good week.
My least favourite release this week is the Higher Power record, and it's a very good album. So it's a really good week this week.
Yeah, it is. So let's shit on that now with Trade Off. We're going to start with The Enemy, I think.
Are we? Okay.
Yeah, we have to, really, don't we?
Yeah.
Last week, I gave you Streets in the Sky by The Enemy, which was released on the 21st of May 2012, the third album from the Coventry-based indie rockers. The Enemy, Renfrew. We have spoken a little bit about the mid-noughties indie landfill thing that happened.
Yeah.
The Enemy became a big band after the release of 2007's We'll Live and Die in This Town.
Yep. That was a debut, right?
That was a debut record. Went to number 1 in the charts.
Right.
They were kind of tipped to basically be the big next indie lad band of choice, the next sort of XFM core band. They're going to be following the footsteps of Kasabian, the Libertines, Oasis, all that, right?
Yeah.
Went into number 1. They supported Oasis, they supported Kasabian, supported the Manics, supported Stereophonics. They supported the fucking Rolling Stones at their O2 shows, right? That's a big deal.
That's huge.
So that's mad to be playing with the Rolling Stones.
Yeah. All of those bands you mentioned, maybe bar Rolling Stones, definitely clearly influences on this band.
Yeah, I would say so. Even the Manics in their more bloated period. Yeah. The critics never really loved The Enemy, but they were doing all right. And I would say, for what it's worth, there are some quite good songs on We'll Live and Die in This Town. Okay. I saw The Enemy do... do you remember the 2000... So it would have been when this record came out. The 2012 Olympics at Hyde Park, they used to show them on big screens, and everyone was free to just go into Hyde Park and watch the Olympics on big screens. And then bands would play afterwards. And I saw Feeder there in Hyde Park, and I saw The Enemy there once when I went down there as well.
Oh, right.
And the title track of that, and there's some aggro. There's some pretty good songs on that first record, albeit pretty kind of basic lad pub rock.
Yeah.
Fast forward 5 years, and the musical climate, I would say probably due to a lot of the artless cack most of those mid-noughties indie bands are putting out, was now dominated by hip-hop and big transatlantic female pop stars, or big pop stars. And this particular brand of, bucket-hatted rock and roll suddenly became deeply, deeply uncool. So thusly, along comes Streets in the Sky, reviewed incredibly negatively. In fact, it is the 4th worst album of all time, according to Any Decent Music, which is a aggregate score website for reviews. The only things above it are Viva Brothers' debut album, don't know what that is, Miley Cyrus's Can't Be Tamed, and Chris Brown's Fortune are 1, 2, and 3 worst albums, respectively. I read some of the reviews. Don't know if you had a chance to read some of these reviews.
For the reviews alone, I am so glad you brought this in, because some of the best music criticism I have ever read has been in regards to this record. I think the key thing with this album is it's real. Like I'm going to confess here, I would have been stumped reviewing this record, because I always find that the hardest albums to review are the really bland ones where there's just nothing going on. There's no substance, blah, 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 blah. Basically the polar opposite of what we tend to try to review on this show. And I admired so much, big shout outs to the Drowned in Sound review and the Quietus review.
Neil Kokani, formerly of Kerrang and Metal Hammer, did the Drowned in Sound review, which...
Oh, wasn't it? I thought it was John Calvert. It was John Calvert who did Drowned in Sound.
Okay, yes, so it would have been sorry, it was a Quietus, you're quite right. So yes, you're right, I got that mixed up. Neil Kokani in the Quietus, who features plenty of zingers, but I have to say, nothing is quite as on the line as... I've actually taken a bit from it, I'm going to read it now if you don't mind.
Yeah,
Pity the enemy, so young and yet soon confronting the limits of their dunderheaded imaginations. Warner Bros. Have pulled out now, and this comeback record is make or break. But from the off, bands like The Enemy made a fatal mistake, have a fundamental misunderstanding of what music is, what makes music great. This generation of lad rock wannabes have all the fatal flaw inherent in this sham masquerade. Music is muscle memory to them. The idea that if you do this to a guitar, if you do this to a bass, if you do this to a drum kit, all these things that you've seen others do, what will come out will be great, proper music.
That's good.
It's so perfect.
Yeah. I won't do all of it because I think you should go and read these reviews anyway. But the first line of the Drowned in Sound review is "the unmusic, the abyss staring back," which I think is perfect. These reviews are just wonderful. They're absolutely incredible. Really, really admired them, because writing about boring music I find extraordinarily difficult. So for them to write these 2 brilliant essays on one of an incredibly bland record, I thought was astonishing. So hats off to them.
But now you have to talk about.
Yeah. I found one positive review.
Really? Okay, what was that?
It was by a writer called Alan Paul. It was courtesy of local newspaper Coventry Live.
Of course it was.
The band are from Coventry. In a review that was littered with errors, Alan Paul begins the review by calling other critics lazy souls. So, bit of a chip on his shoulder to begin with. He says that Streets in the Sky is the trio's strongest collection to date. I just wanted to know what you thought of this. Clark has matured into a Premier League singer-guitarist. If you really must, you can pinpoint echoes of Jarvis Cocker, Paul Weller, even Fergal Sharkey, perhaps. And there are certain times when you could swear that the great Steve Marriott has been reincarnated with a Midlands twang, but at the end of the day, he's very much his own man, and The Enemy, of course, are anything but a one-man band. As with all bass players, Andy Hopkins' contribution is largely subliminal.
What?
I know. But feel that rhythmic power reverberating through the frame of a 10-year-old Golf, and you'll be in no doubt about his ability.
I don't know what any of that means.
No, I don't know what it means. Liam Watts is nothing short of phenomenal. This is the drummer. Oh. He still looks like an undernourished 5th form art student, but a hod carrier in a particularly aggressive mood could hardly give the drums a more ferocious battering. I mean, it is like you listen to a totally different record.
Okay.
I don't know what to say about this album. It's boring.
It's boring. Now, So the reason I brought this in, I thought, I want to get something which is really bad to bring in.
Yeah.
And I actually Googled the worst albums ever. And this one popped up. And because, I'd got that first Enemy record, right? And I thought, it's not really very good. But, I mean, this is crap, definitely. Like, it's definitely crap, this. But worse than the Kooks? The Fratellis? Jet?
I'm actually...
Razorlight? Frey? The Pigeon Detectives? Really?
I'm really glad.
For me.
I'm really glad you said this because I can't see any particular merit in this record, but fourth worst album on the aggregate website that you mentioned, I was expecting to listen to something embarrassing or completely un-PC or something. Like I was expecting a car crash, and all I got was something incredibly boring.
Yeah.
And I've heard loads of boring records over the years, and this is no worse than a lot of boring records that I've heard. I want to make it very clear that I am not recommending it, but it's a 2 out of 5. But at least there's a 2 there. I think I don't know why I'd give it a 2.
Why are you giving it a 2? It's a look. It's a 1 out of 5. It's a bad record. This. It's a bad record.
Yeah.
It's a bad record. It's boring.
Yeah.
The only things you can remember are like Saturday.
Yeah.
It's football chant crap.
Yeah.
Right? It's crap. This is a crap record. It's not good. The Enemy have definitely been better than this before. Again, I am not going to sit here and go, well, not this one, but do go and listen to We'll Live and Die in These Towns. I think We'll Live and Die in These Towns that's more of a sort of 5 out of 10. Where there's a couple of all right songs on that, but they're not. I'm not ever going to go and. I saw the Enemy for free and just stood there and went, oh, I think I know this one, and that was it, right? And they're pretty boring, right? It's boring, but it doesn't enrage me in the same way as those bands that I just mentioned: the Kooks, Fratellis, Razorlight, the Fray, the Pigeon Detectives, the fucking Jet. That shit. It doesn't enrage me. It
doesn't enrage me at all. This album, I just find it really boring.
They also, I think it was around this time, or maybe about a year before, got mugged off on stage. Tom Clark, their lead singer, got mugged off on stage at the Enemy Awards from the bloke from The Horror, right? Some fucking art school prick in an equally bland and bad band, giving them shit for like basically their kind of working class shtick. Right. Now, the Enemy have said some pretty silly things about how, people didn't get us because we were too political previously.
Yes.
And we're the sound of, real music and all that kind of naff crap.
Yes.
But, I'm not sticking up for this album. It's really bad. But then all that stuff's bad.
Yeah.
And some of it is much, much worse. I think what this is snobbery from the fact that they are very keen to play up their working class background, and I also think it's down to timing.
For me, it's primarily the latter. Yeah,
I think the timing is somebody needed to put a stake through the heart of this stuff in 2012.
I think this is the point where the camel's back broke. You know, I think this is the point where it's just like where they were just like, enough of this bullshit. I mean, if you think about it, this is 2012, right?
Yeah.
So when did that music start coming into prominence? It was probably around 2004.
Earlier than that.
Yeah.
I would say it's, it's, post Oasis, it's massive, right?
Yeah.
It's basically been a sort of steady stream of getting shitter and shitter and shitter from Oasis. There was sort of a few peaks where the Strokes or the White Stripes came along, and I know those bands are very different to like British Britpop bands, but Oasis became Ocean Colour Scene, became Travis, became Coldplay, became fucking Embrace, became a couple of all right bands like suddenly off the back of the fact that LCD Sound System and the Interpol and the Strokes happened.
Block Party.
You got Block Party. You got the first Maximo Park album, Editors.
Yeah, Editors.
Art Brute. There were some, which again, are much more kind of artsy bands.
Yep.
But what came kind of, even the first Kasabian album is good.
Okay.
The first Kasabian album's good. And then that's when it started to be every terrible fucking thing that, Stereophonics, who, again, first couple of Stereophonics albums, all right.
This first two, I really
good.
like the first two. Yeah.
And then everything after that is
Bland,
slowly
shite.
getting blander and crapper and worse and blah, 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 blah. And it is just, by the time you get to, I'd say by the time you get to 2006, it's fucking over.
Yeah.
It's like, this is awful. But it didn't go away.
But it didn't go away. Yeah.
It was
Maybe
still,
that was the
the
problem.
In-Betweeners soundtrack, wasn't it? It was still like, do you know what I mean?
You have theorized in the past about Linkin Park being the
The split.
in metal. Yeah, and kind of, give me your thesis really quickly.
Well, essentially, Hybrid Theory came out and brought in loads of people who didn't really like metal.
Yeah.
And made people who really did like metal but kind of were willing to put up with Korn go, well, nah, fuck this. No. You're either Saxon or you're not metal. And all these other people going, no, it's all right. Young Guns are metal.
Yeah.
And those two people can never get on.
And you've sort of already made this, without explicitly saying it, made this connection. But isn't this Oasis's fault?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Abso-fucking-lutely.
Yeah.
It's not Blur's fault, is it?
Certainly not Blur's
Not
fault.
Pulp's fault.
No.
Not Radiohead's fault. It's Oasis's fault.
Yeah. And we've said nice things about Oasis on this show. If Aqueous comes on, I will be singing the lyrics very. They were pretty decent with a tune. I will say that. But that kind of like that attitude towards shit lyricism and just like, a song doesn't have to mean anything and all that kind of thing. I do think it worked to an extent for Oasis, but unfortunately it was then kind of taken on by a lot of these. But I mean, the Enemy can claim...
You can only do that for so long.
Exactly. The Enemy can claim they're political all they fucking want, but no, they're fucking not. This is rubbish. There's no substance to it whatsoever. No. It just made, as I was listening to this, wasn't the worst experience of my life. Certainly was far from the best, but it was just completely meh for 40 minutes. Mm-hmm. But I was just sat there going, this is Oasis's fault. It's their fucking fault.
I mean, it's definitely Oasis' fault. And I think as much as anything, it's kind of Oasis, the attitude that it's not even Oasis music. I mean, like a lot of it is Oasis musically, therefore. I mean, what Oasis do is, I think one of the things I said when I talked to people about doing stand-up comedy is that I think the problem when I was doing stand-up is people would suddenly see Russell Howard or Lee Mack on telly and go, he's just walked up and it looks like he's just talking and he's really funny and everyone loves it. Oh, that looks really easy. I can do that. Well, you can't actually.
Yeah.
You actually can't do that. It takes you fucking 10, 15 years to be able to even learn how to kind of be able to look natural on stage, let alone get the cadence. You know what I mean? They make it look really easy, but it's actually really, really fucking difficult.
That's actually the genius of those.
Yeah, that is a genius. Whereas people who don't go, wow, what a genius, but how hard that must be to make that look so easy. People just go, that looks easy.
Even, I mean, you might throw something at me, but even Michael McIntyre is...
Mate, I've gone on record before. I did gigs with Michael McIntyre in pubs back in the day, for like 15 years ago, and I've seen Michael McIntyre compare gigs where he would do 20 minutes between the acts off the top of his head, and it was just impossible for someone to go on after him. Impossible. Yeah. Because no one wanted to watch him though. He was fucking phenomenal.
Yeah.
But you don't see that on telly.
Yeah.
And it looks really, he's just come on and he's just wobbled his head and gone, you see these people, and that's it. Yes, we've got a man draw. Yes. And people go, oh, I can do that. I can talk about the things in my house and wobble my head in a posh voice and sort of skip around.
It's really difficult to come up with I know we're going on a tangent here, but it's really difficult to come up with a comedy routine about seatbelts, though, for example. Something as mundane as that. Like, it is, I don't love Michael
And the people
McIntyre,
get and obviously Noel Gallagher for a while was a really, really great songwriter. He managed to write really, really brilliant songs.
So Oasis is the Michael McIntyre of the indie world. Yeah. I think that's...
I don't think that's
I think that's a great shout.
Like bad thing to say, because Oasis, their last few records. Someone actually tweeted me today about Heathen Chemistry. Like I said at the Drive-In Relationship Commands, my favourite album, and he went, "Well, I haven't even heard Heathen Heathen Chemistry properly.
Well, I have, and it's atrocious.
Well, I should still give it a listen before I start saying stuff about it.
I'll give it to you on trade-off if you want.
Yeah. He was joking, obviously.
Okay.
But, yes, a whole generation of people going, I have the right haircut and I wear the right clothes and I walk around with a chip on my shoulder.
Yeah.
And I stand stock still looking moody. And I play
with my hands behind my back.
Yeah, with a Gibson, strumming on a Gibson and going on about how much I like the Beatles, and Paul Weller. I'm a proper band. Nah.
Nope.
Nah. This is rubbish. It's fucking rubbish. But my God, it is. You're right. It's the straw that broke the camel's back, is what it is. It's not the worst record by one of the. It's not even probably not even the worst record that came out from this type of thing that year.
No, probably isn't. I mean, I don't want to find out what was, but no, it probably isn't. But I think it was just the moment where critics in particular went, please stop this fucking nonsense. I can't take any more. And actually the Drowned in Sound and Quietus review, Drowned in Sound review particularly, does read like a man who's snapped and can't, it is brilliant.
One of the comments, I mean, most of the comments are like, haha, great, and this is brilliant. But I did see one of the comments on the Neil Kakani Quietus review that just said, ear mate, you sound well jealous. The enemy are letter R, are banging with no G on the end. Right. And that was his sort of comeback. You're jealous. Jealous of what?
I listened to this on YouTube, and it was quite startling, the amount of comments which were like, this tune's banging and all that sort of stuff. And it's just like, you're illiterate and you can't spell and you're rubbish.
Mm-hmm. Football.
Music for illiterate people.
Yeah. There you go. So if you like Michael McIntyre and Chelsea Football Club.
It's been said before, but music for people who don't like music. That's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, at the other end of the spectrum, so that's Streets and Sky by The Enemy.
Yeah. The complete opposite end of the spectrum.
The other end of the spectrum, Renfrew, you gave me Meatloaf's Bat Out of Hell 2, released on the 14th of September 1993, at the height of grunge. He's done it again, the bloody idiot. He released Bat Out of Hell in 1977, right when punk was massive. Now here he is again, trying to get Alice in Chains fans to listen to him. It was bad enough that he was trying to get people who listen to The Clash to listen to his fucking bloated nonsense. He thinks fucking Mudhoney fans are going to want to listen to this.
Isn't it insane that this album came out the same year as In Utero? That's fucking mental.
Mental.
It sounds like those two albums weren't even conceived on the same planet, let alone in the same year.
So after a series of legal disputes throughout the 1980s, Meatloaf and Jim Steinman, who is the mastermind behind
the Bat Out of Hell trilogy.
Yes, Bat Out of Hell trilogy. Got back together and decided to revisit the album that made them superstars. Do you want to kick this off?
I'm actually going to take what you just said and run with it a little bit, because in an interview, this shows the difference between Jim Steinman and Meatloaf, right? Jim Steinman reasserted the continuation of the Bat Out of Hell world by saying, I didn't call it Bat Out of Hell 2 just to identify with the first record. It really does feel like an extension of that. It was a chance to go back to that world and explore it deeper. It always seemed incomplete because I conceived it like a film, and what would you do without Die Hard 2? And then Meatloaf himself was more succinct, and he told an interview at the time, we called it Bat Out of Hell 2 because that would help it sell shitloads. That's the difference between those two people, right?
The yin and the yang.
Yeah, beautifully encapsulated in one quote. God, what can I tell you? Well, like I said, I have brought this in because I thought it would be an interesting to explore, a little bit self-indulgent, I apologise, but interested to explore the first album I ever purchased on compact disc with my own money.
Talk me through that that scenario and how you came to that decision.
I believe I was 10 years old or something like that. So it would have been 1995.
Did you have a beard?
Yeah. I'll try and find some pictures. I'll try and find a picture and put it up on the Riot Act podcast. Twitter. There we go. Fucking hell. Shitting. God, why did I buy this record? What? I don't know.
You were 10.
Yeah, I was 10. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'd heard I would do anything for love and I won't do that. 12 minutes.
Should we talk about that before we go into it? Because I feel like that's almost a completely different conversation before we even get into the record. So shelve how you felt about it. But you heard it and then go back into... Sorry, go on.
It's okay. I feel like I'm being directed.
Yeah.
God, I just loved it. It was so grand and ridiculous and operatic. And I don't know, I was trying to think about this on the way here, and I was like, I did a lot of Amdram when I was amateur dramatics when I was younger, and the through line between Meatloaf, particularly the Bat Out of Hell stuff, and musicals, I think is very clear.
Oh, definitely.
It does sound like, I mean, rock opera was basic. That term was invented for the original Bat Out of Hell, wasn't it? If it wasn't, I'd be surprised if it wasn't. I mean, quite possibly, yeah. I suppose Queen, but you know, it's so apt. It's so apt for all of the Bat Out of Hells. I'm not really a musical fan these days, but I think at the time I probably, you know, I remember having, I think I got like Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat out of the local library on tape, and I had Cat's soundtrack on tape and all this kind of thing, you know. So it probably had something to do with that as well. This album for such a long time, and I think this is quite interesting, something that I, you know, am mocked for to this day. The length of the songs on this album is ridiculous. So I'd Do Anything for Love is 12 minutes in the album version, the unedited version. They did 2 radio edits in the end, one which is about 5.5 minutes, another which is about 7.5 minutes. But yeah, the original version is 12 minutes and 1 second, I believe. And it kind of made me, for a long, long time, I would pick up CDs, I'd look on the back and hope that they had the times for each track, and if there was an epic song or a couple of epic songs on the record, that's what I would naturally gravitate towards. And that is something which,
like Tubular Bells by Mike Oldfield.
Hey, Tubular Bells 2 is I don't know why it's always the sequels that I was into, but I listened to Tubular Bells 2 loads around this time. Probably I fucking loved it, you know. I should do Tubular Bells stuff. I'll bring in Tubular Bells at some point.
Come
on. But yeah, there was just something about the excess and the extravagance of this record that I loved, and you know, maybe that is why I, you know, mock me all the time about it with post rock. And you did it in the Caspian review. You said, "Oh yes, that's your favourite song because it's the longest." I think it all comes back to Meatloaf.
Fucking
I really do. I think that is the reason. And I
blame Meatloaf for having to review that mono album.
I think that's where the taste comes from. You know, I think it's insane, but I think that is it. I mean, this is such an extravagant record. It makes My Chemical Romance's The Black Parade look like circle jerks or something like that, you know. And I don't mean that as a diss on The Black Parade. I just mean it as this is a really extravagant OTT record made and released in a time where that was the exact opposite of what was fashionable or cool. Meatloaf's definitely never been cool. But in a way, I really admire him for that. Like, isn't that the ultimate punk rock expression? Just doing the total opposite of what everyone thinks is awesome and cool.
Yeah, it kind of is.
I mean, I'm not trying to claim that Meatloaf's more punk than circle jerks or anything like that. But I do think that it falls into that punk ethos a little bit. I don't think Meatloaf is punk at all. He probably despises punk music, but
I think we need to sort of rewind and talk about the song.
Yes, the song. Yes.
The song. Yes. So I Do Anything for Love, but I won't do that. Sold 716,200 copies in the UK.
Nice.
Stayed at the top of the charts for 7 weeks. In the United States of America, it sold 1.4 million copies
This is the
of a
single.
single.
Yeah.
1.4 million copies of a single
Fucking
was
mad.
number one for 5 weeks. It was also the longest song to hit the top of the charts since Hey Jude by the Beatles. It is the 7th biggest selling song in the history of German music ever. Right? It was number one in 28 countries.
Yeah.
And it features the iconic video, which I've actually watched a few times recently. The iconic video, which does not feature the vocal talents of Lorraine Crosby, we should say as well. Lorraine Crosby was a club singer who was brought in to provide the vocals for the sort of female part.
A guide
vocal. So she's never received any royalties from this.
Yeah,
this song.
you don't get royalties if you provide guide vocals, apparently, which is insane because her bit is wicked.
Yeah, it was meant for Cher or Bonnie Tyler or Melissa Etheridge. And it was Dana Crosby who played the beauty in the video, who mimed along to it alongside Meatloaf's Beast.
Video directed by Michael Bay.
Yes.
He of the Transformers movies, Armageddon, Pearl Harbor,
Any bad
Boys.
film you can think of.
Yeah.
Basically. Michael Bay had his mitts on it. So yeah, it's a Beauty and the Beast video. David Baddiel, I remember doing stand-up at the time and saying she kisses a beast and he turns into meatloaf. Summing up what most people were thinking. But it is a great video. I was very different from you, Renfrey. I was a little bit older, so I was 13.
Yeah.
I fucking despised this bloody song. I hated it. I hated it so much. Every week I'd sit there and watch Top of the Pops and my mates would come round and we'd go, surely. Like, we managed to work it out because we used to sit with the TV in the corner and there's a clock next above the TV. And if they did the top 10 countdown at like 18 minutes past, we'd all go, you've got to be fucking kidding me. You have got to be fucking kidding me. Like, there's 12 minutes left of this show. They're going to show this whole fucking video again. I don't believe... And we would sit every week and go, again, this fucking... What is going on? And, after Bryan Adams and Wet, Wet, Wet as well.
Yeah.
There was a spate of... And I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston. There was a spate of songs from films.
Epic ballads.
Big epic ballads getting to number one in the UK during the early 90s. We say it wasn't cool. It wasn't cool where we were sitting or where we were from. But in the grand scheme of things, in mainstream terms, it is a fucking, a slam dunk. That was the thing. Bryan Adams, Wet, 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 Whitney Houston, Meatloaf.
It was commercial, but I don't think it was cool.
Oh, no, you're right. It wasn't cool.
Definitely.
But it was certainly a way to sell a fuck
ton of records.
ton of records.
Yeah.
It's weird because I absolutely fucking hated this song with a raging, burning passion. I thought it was a stupid, bloody load of old bollocks. I really couldn't stand it. I used to have a tape of, I think it was like Now 22 or something like that, and it was on that tape, right?
The full version?
Yeah, the full version. It took up fucking half the tape. And and I used to have a tape deck, and the annoying thing about that, you kind of fast forward for a bit, and then you go, I don't want to listen to that one. So you'd fast forward, and then you'd play, and you'd be like, oh, it's still there. And normally you could sort of fast forward, and I would find myself going, oh God, fast forward this. You fast forward, and you go, right, that's been enough. And then it would just be ding, 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 ding. I was like, it's still the intro. Fast forward some more. Ding, ding, ding. It's still the fucking intro. I fast forward some more. Would you really? He's like, I've been fast forward for 6 minutes and I've only just got to the fucking female button. You're like, oh my fucking God. I just want to listen to Open Up by Left Field and John Lydon, the next song. And it won't go away, this fucking song. I did not like this song. But over the years, much like everything from the 90s, I found myself really quite liking it.
It's good, isn't it? It's really good. I was listening to it on the way here.
It's actually quite a good song.
It's, look, objectively, and I will say this about a lot of this record, objectively, it's a very well-written, conceived album, and I'll Do Anything for Love particularly is objectively a very well-written song.
I mean, look, Adam Reese from Metal Hammer will probably beat me up, but I fucking hate power ballads. They suck. I'm sorry, Adam, if you're listening, they're rubbish. But somehow,
Adam did tweet me actually, and he said that he loves this record as well. It's his favourite Meatloaf album.
all right, shock. He fucking loves power ballads, and I'm always like, mate, if you ever stick on fucking Black Velvet, or If I Could Turn Back Time, or any of that shit around me, I'm like, oh, please God, no. But I actually have found a soft spot for that. Over the years, but my God, did I hate this. So I used to see it in the shops, and I just thought, how is this fucking cunt still like sell it? Like, it was number one for so long. I mean, again, like, to move on to the record, the album, 14 million copies sold worldwide, 5 times platinum in the US, 6 times platinum in the UK, 9 times platinum in Canada, 2 times platinum in Germany. Massive.
Oh, huge.
Absolutely massive. You know,
Huge.
16 years after doing the same thing with the first Bat of Hell becoming huge, he went and did it again. I mean, critically, again, I've pulled up some reviews that
It was mixed.
mixed, I'd say, yeah.
But there are some surprises.
There are some surprises. Well, Rolling Stone gave it 2 out of 5,
Yeah.
which they've now demoted to a 1.
Yep.
Harmless, low-octane drivel with insufferably long Steinman compositions and equally long names, says Rolling Stone.
Yep.
But it wasn't totally panned.
No.
The Kerrang wondered how Steinman's old-fashioned teen dream rock and roll fantasies would fit in with Nirvana and Metallica fans, but there's an older generation of rockers out there who will quite properly worship this album, and gave it 4Ks.
Yeah.
4Ks in Kerrang in 1993. This is a Kerrang which has started to sort of open its doors up to, well, obviously Nirvana and Soundgarden, etc., but even Green Day and Offspring and NoFX and stuff like that was starting to get into Kerrang. So you wouldn't expect that iteration of Kerrang to be particularly positive about this record, but they were.
I guess not. I mean, let's remember that 7-8 years previous wasn't well. That's one thing I was going to say, but there was also Bryan Adams was their album of the year, wasn't it? In 85 or 86, I can't remember now. Can't have been 86 because Master of Puppets came out that year, but maybe it was. Yeah. Maybe it was. I don't know. So it's not as if Kerrang didn't have precedent for that kind of thing, but yeah, I mean, I think at that time it would have been like, Q Magazine gave it 4 out of 5 as well, didn't they? To be honest with you, like, you know, honestly, when I say that I've loved returning to this record, I cannot sit here and honestly go that it isn't down to nostalgia. But I also can't sit here and objectively say that this is a bad album either.
No.
I think it is overblown and it is pompous and it is OTT and it is too long, bloody, bloody, blah.
I mean,
That is the point of it, though.
Even the fucking monologue. Wasted Youth.
The monologue. Oh my God, it's so good.
It just goes on forever. It's like... I mean, it says there it's 2 minutes 41. I thought it's as long as The Irishman.
That's actually performed by Jim Steinman.
Jim Steinman, yeah.
And is basically a monologue about how he takes a Fender guitar. We're not sure if it's a Stratocaster or a Telecaster, but it's one or the other, and tries to kill his parents with it. It's fucking bonkers. It's absolutely. It is stupid. It is stupid. But do you know what I love about this record? And the haters didn't appreciate.
The haters.
Meatloaf and Jim Steinman would have been the first people to say it was stupid.
Yeah.
Like that, but that was entirely the point. Like I mean, it's a ridiculous record. Life is a Lemon, and I Want My Money Back. I mean, tune.
I mean, that's quite a good. Yes, it's a pretty good song. That, and there's some
It actually is.
I mean, the one for me, I have to say, there are some great, albeit lengthy and very cheesy tracks on here. That riff and piano part on Out of the Frying Pan. And it's so broad. It's so Broadway. Now that sounds like the opening to a Broadway musical to me. I'm stunned they didn't open the whole thing with that. But then I guess when you've got a song as big as "I Do Anything for Love," then I guess you probably wouldn't. But that's a really. I mean, I'm not big on musicals at all. But I can hugely see the appeal in something like that.
Yeah, definitely. Objects in the rearview mirror may appear closer than they are. fucking great song.
Well, now this is where we're
Oh,
gonna
okay.
differ.
That's fine.
Because Rock and Roll Dreams Come Through, Objects in the Rearview Mirror, the other singles, I remember hating the other singles more than I hated I Would Do Anything for Love. And I still, for me, as I said, I don't like power ballads. I say I like the big silly songs more than I like the power ballads.
Yes, I
And
would
it's
totally agree
probably
with you.
50-50 on this record.
Yes. Half of it I'm really not into anymore. But
So stuff like, out of the frying pan into the fire, Life is a Lemon, I think is cool. But when it gets to kind of the more mawkish stuff like Lost Boys and Golden Girls,
yeah, nah. I think even at the time I didn't like that song. Everything Louder Than Everything Else, mind.
yeah,
Fucking banger. Fucking love
yeah,
it.
it's good.
Everything louder than everything else.
Yeah.
Everything louder than everything else. It's so good. Would you call Objects in the Rearview Mirror a power ballad?
I know I wouldn't call it a.
I think it's on the fringes. I understand what you're saying, but
It's a
I don't
slower
think
one.
it. Yeah, it's
It's
slower.
not a rager, is it?
No, it's not a rager like Everything Louder Than Everything Else. I certainly agree that, Rock and Roll Dreams Come Through, meh. It just won't quit, meh. I mean, I probably didn't think these things as a 10-year-old. In fact, I certainly didn't, because I love this record from front to back, more or less, apart from the last song. Yeah, and it is, when it's syrupy and ballady, it is incredibly syrupy and ballady. But when it, quote unquote, rocks or rocks, it probably should be said in this context, and this is the only context that you should use the word rocks.
It drive me fucking mad. If I ever saw that in the NME, I'd take it as a personal insult. And they'd say that about like Feeder or something. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Like rock.
I fucking hate
Fuck
it.
off.
But
Making out like they were poison or something.
as I say, I think objectively it is, I think that Rolling Stone review, for example, is a bad review, because I totally understand if you can go, look, this is not to my taste at all and I do not like this. And it has gone, this album has, I have grown to the point where this album is quite far away from my taste now. It's far too cheesy for me. And, but in terms of like the ability and the way that it's put together and the just sheer mammoothness of it, and I said it at the top of this, this is more epic than the Black Parade, which is a pretty epic record.
Yeah.
It's a stunning achievement.
It's right up there, yeah.
It's a stunning
And
achievement.
I can't really imagine anyone else being capable or even
pulling
really
it off.
wanting to do it, really.
Yeah.
But definitely being capable of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I very much doubt that I'm ever going to listen to it again. But fair play to Meatloaf, and I kind of feel like I would rather have something like this, in comparison to, we've just been talking about the Enemy, and we just went, oh, what's the point in being alive if this is what music is? At least this elicits some. It's not boring. It elicits some. It's hugely cheesy. It's massively pompous. It's completely overblown. It's tiresome and ridiculous, and and all of those things. But it isn't just someone sort of shuffling around, which is what the Enemy is.
Absolutely.
I mean, you'd rather have that than that.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone, I don't know if anyone has in the history of the world.
What
But
AB these days?
I wasn't going to say that. Is that laughter or tears? It's difficult to tell. It is. But
My AB straight in the sky by the Enemy, straight in the back of L2.
Actually, I think I did earlier today. Funnily enough, I mean,
Don't do that.
no, don't. It's
is
a
some
really
weird
disorientating.
Like drug, having like loads of coke and loads of heroin at the same time.
So this is the Coke album. And yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone's ever accused Meatloaf of being boring, but if anyone ever did, like, you'd just be like, well, no, that's preposterous. That is not.
Definitely not boring.
Yeah, and I totally understand people having issues with this record, and I understand why, and I agree with a lot of the issues. But yeah,
Exhausting's a better word.
it is exhausting. It is exhausting. It's too long. You know, it's ridiculous. It's very cheesy, like ridiculously cheesy, but incredibly well put together. It really is. And in terms of when, you know, most people's first record that they bought with their own money, it's usually really, really embarrassing. And I can understand why people might feel that I would be embarrassed about Meatloaf Bat Out of Hell 2. But just in the, like, tracing it back and looking at the way that it's influenced my taste and stuff, I wouldn't have it any. I'm so pleased it was this record. It could have been so much worse. It could have been so much worse.
Batman by Prince is mine, isn't it? So not embarrassing at all.
Which we've already discussed.
Yeah, we've done
yeah, I mean, you know, I've never wanked to this record, but, you know.
Fuck me, you'd be red raw if you lasted all the way through this record.
Something to try.
Right,
there we go.
Okay. Is that the hand? Is that the blood from my knuckles or my phallus? I can't work out anymore. Just a stump. You couldn't last that long, mate. You couldn't. Although it would be difficult to come during this record as well. So, no, I'm confused. Anyway.
Probably the best point to leave it. I imagine.
Bat Out of Hell 2 by Meatloaf. Hilarious.
If you've never heard it, definitely listen to it.
Out of the two records that we've talked about on Trade Off, this is the one to listen to for sure. For sure. Yeah. Anyway, that's it for this week. We're going to give each other a album now. For not for next week. I'll tell you why in a second. Renfrey, I'm going to presume that you're not the world's biggest Earth Crisis fan.
No.
So I'm going to give you their 1998 album, Breed the Killers. Things are going to get back on track.
Breed the Killers. Okay.
Breed the Killers by Earth Crisis I'm giving you. What are you going to give me? You don't know, do you?
I'm going to give you... No, I'm trying... Well, I was waiting for you to tell me because I wanted to do something which would be different. So I'm going to give you White Fields and Open Devices by Vessels.
White Fields and Open Devices by Vessels and Breed the Killers. That won't be next week. That's it for this week, by the way. Go over to musicism.net to get your courses. They're $9.99. You can get 25% off if you put Riot in capitals in the checkout. The reason next week we won't be doing trade-off is we'll be having some guests. The Loathe Boys are going to be in the house.
They're from the band Loathe. They're not the Loathe Boys, but yes.
The boys from Loathe.
The boys from Loathe.
Yeah, you know the band Loathe? Mm-hmm. They're going to be on the show next week.
Yep.
Which will be good. They got a new album coming out, which we review the week after.
Yeah, we got Eric and Kadeem from Loathe, and it's going to be spiffing.
That would be very exciting. We're also going to be talking about new albums from Leached and Square Pusher, amongst others. Mm-hmm. And we won't be doing the Pet Shop Boys, ever.
No, we decided we're not going to do the Pet Shop Boys.
I just like the Pet Shop Boys. Doesn't mean that they're a Riot Act band, though, does it?
Sorry.
Not.
Yeah.
I tried. I didn't try. I gave up.
You gave up pretty quickly.
Yeah,
you were like, whatever.
Right. We wouldn't do Duran Duran if they had an album coming out because.
Yeah, are you surprised?
Hear me going on about Duran Duran?
You surprised me when you said that. I mean, we did Echo and the Bunnymen. I mean, would you?
Echo and the Bunnymen are not one of those bands, remember?
Oh right, fine. Let's.
Fuck's sake. Okay. Anyway, see you next week. The guys from Loathe will be joining us, and we'll be talking about loads of lovely stuff.
Musicism.
I've done that.
Oh, sorry.
That's it.
Yep.
We're over. We're out. Bye.
Bye.